Hello, everyone. It is another Effluvium live stream. What's cooking? What's happening, folks? What's your scent of the evening or morning or afternoon? Let's hear from you. We'll get started in the chat here. Anton Constantinou, good evening to you as well. Philippe, hello. Scent of the day was Ajmal Santal Wood. We have Einrich here. Hello. Scent of the night is 4711, the 4711. And Philippe is excited to see that we have Derek back, aka Varanis Ridari, aka the Scented Devil, if you follow him on Instagram. And Philippe loves his critical view on fragrances, as do I. He has some of the greatest writing on bass notes. Noah Drucker, great to see you here. Your scent of the day is Le Lion, and that's a nice one. We have 13 people who are tuned in at the moment. Why don't we just put the theme music back on here since it's so delightful. We have Rachel back. I'm excited to have my cohort, my co-host back. She's backstage as well, and we have Derek waiting patiently. So for this live stream, we're going to cover 3 topics, all that were suggested by Derek, and he has discussed these on his own YouTube channel. If you're not aware, he does have a YouTube channel, and it is under Varanis Ridari. So check that out. Do subscribe to him. He's edging closer to 1,000 subscribers. We're going to be talking about the frag bro. What is a frag bro, and what does it really mean? Or does it even really exist? We're also going to talk about the luxury hustle. And there's a lot to say about that because we're seeing a lot more of these luxury brands that are apparently niche, but are they really niche? They're apparently exclusive, but are they really exclusive? And does the pricing really warrant the product, or is it a lot of smoke and mirrors and whistles and bells? And then we're going to also be touching upon the batch code phenomenon and the absurdity that comes along with that. So that should be a great discussion as well. Why don't we get things started here by bringing in Rachel? Hi.
Hi, I'm so happy to see you. Hi, yay.
I'm delighted to see you as well. That's a very nice lamp next to you. It's almost like a camera tripod.
Right. No, thank you so much. We're actually in Chicago for a few days, and this is my mother-in-law's. My mother-in-law has a condo here, and so we're staying there because it's like a family place that we all get to stay in from time to time, and it's quite well furnished, very tastefully furnished. She has amazing taste, and we're just here having fun. It's beautiful weather, and smelling perfumes and just having a great time. And I'm just so happy to be here with my friends. And Derek, oh my gosh, Derek's so great.
We're not going to keep him waiting much longer because he's a good friend of ours. It's Derek himself, the Varanis Ridari, aka Scented Devil. You may know him from Instagram, Bass Notes, and his YouTube channel. Welcome, Derek.
Let me do my whole. The hat's got to go all the way back like this.
Yeah.
He's one of our great community scholars here. I'm just so excited.
Got my thumbnail right here, my thumbnail-worthy picture. But it's a can of soda instead
of an overpriced fragrance. What type of soda are you drinking?
Oh, it's a ridiculous can. So this is not a product advertisement, by the way. I don't endorse this brand. I just buy these from the corner store, but it's got this ridiculous looking screaming eagle thing, but
it's actually the sound of a red-tailed hawk, of course. But we hear that.
But the reason why I drink those is because those don't taste like battery acid, like most of those drinks do. It actually tastes like normal soda. So I'm like, okay, I can handle this.
Sounds delectable. It's so patriotic as well. Love it.
I guess. Patriotic as sugar and caffeine can be, I guess.
Oh, yeah, sugar and caffeine, I feel, are very patriotic indeed. We have Pat Lester here. Hello, JJ. Hello to you, Pat. Thank you for coming by. And then we have Derek in the chat as well. Greetings and felicitations, fellow Fraggles.
That's
down
me.
at Fraggle Rock. I think I'm just going to rename Effluvium Fraggle Rock.
I love
Sweet
that.
Milk, our friend Sweet Milk, our most favorite moderator on one of our favorite subreddits. Good to see you, my friend. Sent of the day, Bulgari Cobra, big Derek fan, as are all of us here. Supply and Demand, hi JJ and Rachel and chat. Good to see you, Supply and Demand. And we have Sweet Milk again. Supply, this is my safe space now. Great. Why don't we just get started with the conversation? Because I think we want to make the most of these 2 hours we have scheduled. Derek, what is a frag bro? Can you tell us what is that?
Well, I don't want to take credit for the original genesis of the discussion because it is a Base Notes thread that someone else on Base Notes started and created a really interesting, healthy conversation for a change, right? So,
Right.
in this user, I'm probably messing his name up, but it's like SLSPRFRY, like Slippers Fry or something. But he's got like a Welsh flag logo, so you'll know him. He's got like a picture of a thinker. He's like his icon is going like this.
The famous Rodin sculpture, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So, but he kind of posited the question that the whole frag bro thing is like a straw man, that it's just a bogeyman. It's a caricature that we've whipped up, us nerds and hardcore enthusiasts. We've created this pastiche of our equal opposite, our antithesis, that there really is no such thing as a true frag bro according to the way we define such a person. Maybe traits here and there interspersed, but never someone that ticks all the boxes, right, of a frag bro. And I looked at this conversation, I'm like, yeah, you're kind of right. I mean, there may have been a point in time where someone that ridiculous may have existed briefly in the online community, like during peak Aventus or peak Sauvage or whatever, like 5-6 years ago. But like most things, runs its course, and now there is no person that 100% fits that definition. Folks are further along one end of the scale or the other, but as I said, I think there may be some merit to the argument that there isn't really a frag bro anymore, if there ever really was. So
no, I think that's so intelligent. I mean, anytime you have a group of people who really do want to establish a true community, one of the fastest and easiest ways to do that is to create an other, right? Against which we form a community. Oh, we're not that, so we can. Yeah. It's just an easy way to create a group bond. And so, yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense, because then we can get together as a community and say, well, we're not that, and then we don't have to what we are doesn't have to become contentious, right? So it creates an in-group bond. So I think that's like really perceptive.
Yeah, that's true. Well, what are some of the characteristics of this fabled frag bro? Like what kind of, are they content creators as well, or influencers? Have we had frag bro types like that, or are they mostly those who consume the content and the message boards and all that sort of stuff? Derek, how would you describe this supposed frag bro, or if you can?
I think that at least from my experience, I've been in the online side for about 20 years, although I wasn't in Base Notes until 2012-ish. But from my experience, I want to say maybe, like, I do see some content creators as more focused on style or health issues or adjacent things to fragrance. Yeah. But the thing is, though, I would be loath to call them frag bros because they're not just fragrances. Like the kind of people that would perpetuate a culture that someone might go, yeah, that's a frag bro. They're also doing like men's health. They're doing fashion, fitness. They're more like just your general like lifestyle type of an influencer, lifestyle type of a content creator that fragrances are just a part of.
Yeah.
So you would be doing them a disservice, and you would be reducing them by saying they're just frag bros, right?
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
You know, it's really interesting because I feel like there's almost content created for this mythical frag bro. So it's almost like an advertising situation, like, you know, like the panty dropper videos
Right.
and stuff like that. So you're right. It's like this lifestyle kind of guy, this bar douche, you know, who goes like peacocking to hit on women kind of guy. And so I feel like almost like people who are part of people whose circle of fragrance also involves maybe advertising or selling or, you know, trying to use their knowledge for gain of some kind, which is fine.
Yeah.
I mean, people do that and it's nothing wrong with that. But I feel like some part of that feels like almost an advertising thing, like, oh, these people might have expendable income, or they might be a little bit gullible, or they might, you know, be willing to listen to me to wear the right fragrance to get chicks, or do you know what I mean? Like there feels like there's also some part of that manipulation or advertising to it too that makes it kind of a stereotype, right? And advertising has a lot of stereotypes in it, you know.
And it seems like a lot of the dialogue sounds like the kind of dialogue that would come from an advertiser or somebody working in marketing. You know, a lot of it is really results driven. A lot of it concentrates on the functionality and the ability of the product to work for the consumer. So there's very little discussion of the perfume itself on any sort of higher level, headier kind of, you know, discussion.
Like an artistic level.
On an artistic level, or even on sort of like, you know, get down to the nitty gritty and talk about, you know, even what it smells like. It seems like that is a very small piece of the pie, and a lot of it has to do with whether it delivers results, whether it performs well, and, you know, the projections, sillage, and what's the third one? There's always a third one. Projection.
It's like eating food for nutrition instead of because it tastes good, right? You eat the food because it's got a lot of protein in it, not because it tastes good, right? It's
right. Like when you're working out, when you're bodybuilding, which I did at one time, believe it or not, as doughy as I am now, I used to. And my food, it was sort of the concept of looking at food as fuel rather than enjoyment. You know, the whole, you eat to live rather than live to eat. And then it's just being applied to, you wear a perfume to get attraction. You don't wear a perfume just for the sheer enjoyment and whatever it does for you emotionally or spiritually or whatever. It's just, what is it going to do for you? Is it going to get those results? Is it going to get you laid? Is it going to get you attention? Is it going to make you feel valid and make you feel like, you know, important or some crap? And it becomes more of another conspicuous consumption accessory to go along with your vehicle and to go along with your nice wallet and your nice belt and et cetera and et cetera. So do you think that that's, you know, that really the kind of the usual discourse, as if we could call it something like that, of the frag bro? You know, that's the kind of content that they would consume.
Well, see, the reason why I shy away from calling that person a frag bro, because frag bro implies that they are a part of the enthusiast community, that they actually spend time here discussing fragrances, that they actually have any real personal emotional investment in a hobbyist community. But to me, the kind of person who would care about trend relevance, who would care about performance, compliments, versatility. Can I wear this at the office? Can I wear this on a date? Can I wear this to a wedding or a funeral or my own probation hearing? Yada, yada, yada. That to me just sounds like a normal everyday guy who only has one or two, maybe like 6 bottles at most. That is not an enthusiast. That is not a person with a Fragrantica account, or if they have one, it's just so they can not get hit with you might be a bot. So they create an account just to access the site, but they're not spending time in those forums. They're not really writing reviews. They're not hanging out on YouTube channels or in live streams like this. They're the kind of person that they have other things going on in their life, other hobbies, their job, their family, their friends. They're going to dip in, see what the latest thing is, and go, okay, I'll check this out, and then dip out.
Yeah.
That's not really a frag bro. That's just somebody that goes to the grocery store because they need to eat, not because they love grocery shopping, right? So
let me ask you this, Derek. Do you think that there's any aspect of this hypothetical person, if they even exist, that could see fragrance not as an art, but as something more like a trophy? Do you know what I mean? Like, I can afford this batch coat of Aventus. I can afford this $2,000 sparkly bejeweled bottle, but actually doesn't really care. Do you know what I mean? Like, as a status symbol?
I would call that a collector, though. Just a collector of a different type. Not someone who's collecting for historical significance or collecting genres like Fougere and Chypre or collecting different perfumers they love. They're just collecting in the same way that someone would collect baseball cards. Well, this is my Mickey Mantle from 19 whatever, right? So this is my bottle of Aventus from 2013, March of 2013 or whatever. But I would still call that person more of a collector, maybe more of a flex kind of collector, but still a collector.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I just wanted to bring attention to our friend Empty Sense, all-star panel, where we're very humbled there. I love the emojis. We have a cap that I think represents Derek, but that could represent other people as well, I suppose. We have a
well, let me take the cap off and really throw you for a loop.
Magnifying glass. Am I the magnifying glass? Who's the pin and who's the magnifying glass?
My hair looks like crap, though, but
I love it. Thank you, Empty Sense. Liver is not bad with onions. Just wanted to make chat board move. Thank you for
there
that.
You go.
And you succeeded, because we still have some other comments here. Sweet Milk scared me from typing. JJ must do something about that. Oh, don't be afraid of Sweet Milk. He's actually quite a softie. Famous YouTuber, nice panel. Thank you very much, Duncan.
Going to get my friend Durst on here.
Yeah, that recalls a time that we were on a stream some time ago. We did our impressions using I had a flat brim cap. But yeah, does this fragbo really exist though, or is this just beating a dead horse? To even bring it up now, is it really even relevant?
Do you guys think that there's an equivalent on the women's side of the straw man fragbo, or you think it's really just like a dude thing?
I feel like women don't really care because they've, culturally speaking, had perfume for so long as a part of their daily lives that a woman being a fragette, I guess, I don't know, whatever the feminine of bro would be, but I feel like a woman becoming the equal opposite of a frag bro would be like a woman, bragging about her hairbrushes or some other completely just something that she takes for granted, right? I mean, women do collect perfume, don't get me wrong. I know a few ladies who love their Guerlains and their Luton, all that stuff. But for them, it's more like a stamp collection. Again, like it's that. It's not like I wear this perfume so I can go outside and get all the guys' tongues hitting the floor. They're not really thinking about it like that.
Yeah.
So,
well, there's definitely more female lifestyle influencers in general. And
there are, yes.
Yeah, and their approach to it, I mean, you're talking about things like cosmetics and clothing and fashion and style and all that sort of stuff. But I think the mentality, there's a tendency for it to be a bit different, because I also think that the way that men and women consume these products has a tendency to be a little bit different as well. Mm-hmm. And I also think that not to overgeneralize, but I think that there is some truth behind the fact that a lot of men, it becomes sort of an extension of the ego, and like what can they get out of this experience of having these material possessions, these consumer things. That's not to say that women don't do that too, of course, but I think that the way a lot of guys go about it is somewhat different. So hence the what will this perfume do to get me laid and get me give me popularity, give me cachet, and to make me look as hip and hot as Derek does right now.
Oh yeah, look how hot I am.
Yeah.
Well, see, someone told me to take the cap off, and I'm a contrarian kind of person. I don't like being told what to do.
I know that you
are. I don't like being told what to do, so you tell me what to do, and I'm just going to do it more, right?
Well,
so
why don't we
how that works?
Take a quick look at the chat here, because we do have some activity in here, which is wonderful. We have 22 people tuned in, not too shabby. Catch My Whiff is here. The tough part for the bragger type is they have to find someone that cares and understands why the brag is a brag. That is true. And that brings us to the myth that people actually do give a shit. And most people really don't. Most people really don't. And the compliments thing, I hope that this is finally waning, because it's now become such a cliche, is really just so incidental. I can count on one hand when I've gotten compliments on a fragrance within the past year. Manly Sense is here. Wonderful to see you, my friend. Saying hello to all of us. And is this the culprit right here? We have a lifestyle, not for sale. Just take the cap off, bro. Good to see you, my friend. You're looking quite sharp there, young man or young woman or young other in your sunglasses. Catch my whiff. I feel bad for guys sold a bad bill of fragrant goods expecting the fragrance to be some magical potion to make them more than they are. Yes, I feel bad for that. I feel bad that anybody could think that any kind of material possession is going to give them anything more than what they could just give themselves if they have, the kind of self-esteem that's necessary, But that also brings us to the people who are content creators who use it to try to build their self-esteem as well, And I'm not saying that I'm beyond that, because I think all of us are looking for validation. We're all looking for some sort of approval, or else we wouldn't do these things. It's like the artist who says, like, I only do the artist, for myself. No. An artist wants that expression to be shared with an audience. So
yeah, and that's so true, JJ. And there is a spectrum, right, of pleasure. I mean, part of perfume and the art of perfume, and even the commercial side of perfume, is that it's a pleasurable experience. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here talking about it, loving it, buying it, spending way too much money on it, And I think part of that is, the people who are in our intimate lives, our partners, even our family members, but especially our partners, if they enjoy a fragrance, that's important to us, right? Or the people that we actually spend time with, like my son, for obviously my husband, but like even my son, he's old enough now where he has like really strong opinions about fragrance, and he's learning about it, and it's super fun, right? But I have fragrances that I wear when I go out on date night with my husband, and it's really important, that we have those together and we share them. But that's totally different. Speaking of them, they're just coming home. But that's totally different than, like you're saying, that kind of exploitation, right? That miracle water. What is it? There's that miracle water that they're trying to sell, right? That this is going to get you 100 babes and solve all your problems. Yeah.
Hi, time to musk up, my friend Rudy. Great to see you here. Thanks for dropping by. And this is your first time. Well, welcome. You are welcome here. Absolutely. Ricky Tomatoes, Al Manzano said fragrances were potions. Maybe he was onto something. Yes, I think he is onto something as far as referring to them as potions, because of that ability for it to stimulate certain neurons in the brain, and the hippocampus and the amygdala, and so on and so forth. And that's how we really get like a deeper connection to fragrance. And there's something to be said. And we were talking about this a little bit, actually, my last guest that I had, Alexandre, about how, the general populace has this ability to really connect to a fragrance in a way that maybe we fragrance enthusiasts, we don't really have that anymore, because we want to just take it all in. We want to drink it all in, all these hundreds of different fragrances, that they develop these really strong bonds. And I used to do this before I became a frag head, that you'd wear the same 1, 2, 3, 4 fragrances at tops pretty regularly, and that becomes a part of you. You really develop a very close relationship to it, and I think there is something to be said for that. And sometimes I do kind of miss what that's like, but then I kind of go back to where I am right now, and I realize that this is a fun thing too. Manly Sense says the woman's should be frag biatch. Fernando Soto, hi. Good to have you here as well. And we have I'm loving the contributions in the chat tonight. It's such a lively chat. That's not to say that fragrance doesn't make me feel more attractive, but I wear fragrance to put me in a good mood. The good mood and attitude can make you more attractive, so get to spraying. Do you think that we've said enough about Frag Bros? Is there anything else to say? Derek, do you have any more thoughts on it? I'd like to hear.
I just want to say that if someone is checking all the boxes, then chances are they're doing it on purpose. So it's ironic. Like if someone really is out there going, I only want to wear fragrances because they're popular and or expensive and or sexy and or relevant in the moment, and they really do curate their collection and revolve things in and out when they cease to be relevant, or all of these other shallow criteria. If they're doing all this and they're keeping up with it and they're maintaining this persona, it's a persona. It's not really them. If they're doing it for a reason, whether they're a content creator or maybe they just think it's funny. Like I said, there are people that do a lot of things. Like I posted images on Instagram of a guy with a really long hat bill. He's a comedian. He plays a character named Squeezy Jibs. And Squeezy Jibs is like this typical bro kind of person who has like a lazy face and looks kind of like a burnout a little bit, but he's a character played by a comedian who's not that person off camera. Yeah. So he even has those hats custom made with that long bill just to have like that character. So I'm a bit, like I said, loath to think someone would check all the boxes unless they're doing it deliberately. But I will say that if you find someone coming into a forum like Base Notes or Fragrantica or coming into a Facebook group, they've never been there before. This is their first time there. They're just honestly wanting to know what's good, what lasts a long time, or they're honestly wanting to know what would work for them because they're going on a date or they're going to a job interview or whatever. That's not a frag bro. That's just someone new who wants honest advice, and they have come to you, for better or worse, they've come to you looking for that. So to put them in the wicker man and set them on fire and do all that and send them packing is the wrong thing to do, because that could be someone down the road who develops a taste for the fragrances and becomes the next enthusiast or whatever. But if you chase someone out of Dodge because you suspect them of being other, like Rachel said, that's like, it's like guilty. It's like the Minority Report thing of guilty before you've committed the crime, right?
Yeah.
So, and one other thing, frag bro is just a modern version of what we've always had anyway. In the 70s, we had cologne guys like Time to Musk Up references, Anchorman, that guy with the cabinet and the Sex Panther and everything. Those dudes have been around since time immemorial, whether it was Grandpa draped in Old Spice or Aqua Velva, or Uncle Ron wearing too much Halston or too much Drakkar. They even marketed fragrances for a time to that person, like Sex Appeal by Jovan was a fragrance. Yeah. FC UK was another one that was out for a while. Even Curve had an advertisement about liquid penny dropper, or like LPR, no, liquid penny remover, LPR. That was a real commercial for Curve back in the day. So this is not a new thing, guys. It's not a new thing. It just...
Fabergé had several. Fabergé had Macho in the 70s, and we know that bottle. That bottle is
Turbo and Cellini.
Turbo was the 80s version. Turbo, both very phallic bottles. Showing virility and masculinity.
Full Choke by Smalto.
Full Choke, yes.
Yeah.
That took it to a much more literal level. It even includes the balls. It was supposed to be another. They claimed that it was meant to be another object, some type of joystick, right?
And Lamal guys, Jean-Paul Gaultier has been doing the torso with the bulge since the 90s. So
what is that bulge? Yeah. So it's been going on since the sexual liberation of the 70s, and it just continues happening. And we have Catch, my wife here. Can you imagine a TV studio creating a comedy show revolving around fashion and fragrance? That could be interesting. Perhaps that's something we could try to put together one day. And I'm a self-obsessed fraghead and groupie. I think a lot of us are. Macho is great stuff. I love the bottle. I love the bottles. I'm sure somebody could, joke.
Yeah, it had a very interesting bottle.
Hi, my friend. We are sentient. One of our resident mods. Behave, people. Look, he has a wrench there, so just behave in the chat. He's here to help us out and make sure that the chat has no funny business. And we also have our great friend Donnie. Just add light. Came just at the right time. Yes. Subtlety with fragrances is something that I didn't have until my late 20s, and I think a lot of us can say the same for that.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I definitely oversprayed Tommy when I was a teenager, and blue jeans as well.
So
Navy is another one.
Yeah. Oh, I did a lot of that too, for sure. A little too much. Yeah. That I left my overspraying to my teenage and years in my 20s. So we were talking about othering, and when it comes to frag bros, but do you think that there's an othering phenomenon in other areas in the fragrance community where people want to really make that distinction that they're not like this crew of people over here or this group of people over here who are interested in fragrance, but they don't take it seriously? Derek, can you think of some examples of that? And it would be a great segue to the batch code.
Well, in my earlier time on Instagram, when I actually tried to do anything there, now I don't anymore. I just use it as a direct message hub, really. But in my earlier time on Instagram, when I was doing my live streams and stuff and being more regular there, I did a series of stories where I dressed up as different caricatures. I still have those images, by the way, but I did one for the vintage guys. I did one for the naturals, artisanal hipster guys. I did one for the luxury niche snobs. I did one for the frag bros, and then the one for the like snake oil salesman influencer. I had like 6 different ones. Each one was me like dressed up as a different character of the online community. And so in some ways you can say, yeah, if you want to break it down, there are definitely tribes, or like Harry Potter reference, there's a Hufflepuff and a Slytherin and a Gryffindor. There are definitely different sects of enthusiasts. But if we try to do that, really, to me, it feels a lot like when we were teenagers and we had our music cliques. You got the metalheads here, the punks, the guys into the hardcore gangster rap over there, the ska kids over there. You end up making a lot of people estranged from each other. Nobody makes friends, because you're not in the right group to talk to this person. You can't be their friend. So even though I did that as a joke, to be ironic, these days I try not to really label people. I will make fun of the stereotypes themselves, the categories themselves. I will constantly throw shade on them, but I never like point the finger and give a person the scarlet letter, unless.
I'm so sorry. I'm interrupting. Okay, so I have a question for both of you guys. I love that, Derek. I think that's amazing. It's like, which cafeteria table in high school would you sit at of those categories? So let me ask you that.
Yes.
If you had to, and Derek, if you don't mind repeating those 6, if you had to pick, which of those cafeteria tables would you sit at if you had to pick? And I'm curious if people who are listening would also answer in the chat, because for me, I would probably be in the snob category, as much as I hate to say it. If I had to self-identify, I would be like, give me my Meo Fusione and my, that would probably be me. If I had to pick. But I mean, none of these categories are great, right? I mean, they're not like, they're not happy categories.
I guess I would have to be in the vintage guys category, only on virtue of the fact that the bulk of my collection is made in the 20th century. So, like, the most of my stuff is at least 20 years old. I do have some things from the last 10 years, but most of my stuff is definitely vintage now. If you do the 20-year rule, which would be before 2020, would be before 2004 now, because that's 20 years, but it would be by virtue of that fact alone vintage, although I try to not be that guy because I don't have a harsh view on reformulations and I don't have a harsh view on batches. I'm very centrist, for lack of a better word, when it comes to that stuff. But yeah, I guess I'd have to be at that table. I'd be at the vintage table.
So in high school, I was given a superlative, and people are probably going to really laugh at this, but I was one of the Mr. Congeniality people because I went from table to table. Like I felt like I could sort of mingle with everyone. I didn't really want to be part of one clique, so I knew I was friends with some of the athletes and the jocks. I was friends with the musicians and the drama fags. I was friends with the artists and the ones that hung out and smoked cigarettes, outside of, the gym. Like so I was sort of a table hopper, and I feel like I kind of am as a fragrance person too, because I've learned to cultivate an appreciation for all different areas of fragrance, and I think that that's been to my benefit to a degree. But if I had to choose one table that I probably would feel at the end of the day most comfortable having conversations with, I probably would be sitting with Rachel at the snobby nerdy table, or / maybe the two tables are next to each other. But yeah, because I like to get into I really like to get into the detail of fragrance. It's really about so much more to me. So I would nerd out. Totally be nerding out. Philippe says, same here, JJ. Got told years later that one group thought I was fake for it. Yeah, because you're not sticking to a tribe. Hey, that's another thing too, not to go on a tangent, but I'm not a tribal person. Like, I don't like to stick to a tribe. Like, it can be tough because people, we're humans, and that's sort of like, it's genetically programmed into us to want to have a tribe. But I always kind of felt like I didn't really want to stick to one. So yeah, some people would just say, like, you're not being loyal, you're fake. Like, why are you talking to them? I would get a lot of stuff like that. Okay, we have supply and demand. I used to freestyle rap at one of my old lunch tables in the 90s. One of the guys is a Grammy winner producer from Justice League. That's awesome. And then we have Derek in the chat. Look at Derek, you're definitely making the most of this experience, or as James Hetfield of Metallica said on the Lulu album, I am a table.
He did.
I would be at the table next to the nerds to glean knowledge. Yes, osmosis, take it in. That's good. The nerds can help you out in that respect. That's for certain. And Philippe says, I absolutely agree. And same for fragrances. Diversity is important to me. Indeed. 33 people tuned in. This is lovely. Batch codes, the batch code absurdity. Like, I never got into this. Like, I think I looked up batch codes for my vintages just to kind of get a general idea of the date, the date that it was released. But that was really the extent of it. Like, I don't really get too fixated on it. Derek, what is the absurdity that is behind batch codes? Why are people so obsessed?
Well, there's a legitimate side to this, though. So the legitimate side to this is that the brand Creed, which everyone knows, I think, by now, Creed started the practice of putting actual batch numbers that correlate to a time of production and allegedly correlate to a batch of material used with the fragrance. And they did this to create a similar effect that wine producers have with their various provenance labels, like this is from fall of whatever year, right? Or spring of whatever year, or lot number 3. So, and they did that. And the reason why they did that is because they wanted to create that secondhand collector's market, because they want people to effectively rebuy the same bottle over and over again to see the differences. And they've been doing this since the 90s with Millésime Imperial and other ones. I've got bottles of Royal Water, actually, that predate that practice. They don't really have proper batch codes on them, which surprises people because they're like, oh, that's fake then. I'm like, nope, there was a time where Creed didn't really do that, but they started doing it with the more popular releases, and then it became a practice for them. And then by doing that, and then by tweaking the formula, deliberate reformulations to modify this material, like with Aventus, the famous one is more smoke, less smoke, more pineapple, less pineapple, blah, 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 right? But this was all done intentionally to create these repurchasing people that would want a March 2013 and then a spring 2017 and whatever, because you get the same person now owning 5, 6, 7 bottles of one fragrance instead of just using one until it wears out, right, and then replacing it. They're now rebuying the same thing over and over again to see the A's from the B's, from the C's, from the D's. And unfortunately, that intentional practice bled over into other brands that do not use batch codes for anything other than an internal identification. Internal, oil houses going, this is the date, this. And those batch codes on those commercial fragrances, like your Dior's, like your Chanel's, not only do those batch codes only really correlate to the time of manufacture, they don't correlate to formula at all. They also get rotated and reused. Once the number matrix runs out to 999, it flips over back to 0 again. So you can't really be sure whether it's 2005 or 2015. But the other thing is, when the oil houses change, when the distributor changes, the entire matrix may change. You may go from a 5-number system to a 6-number system with an alphanumeric and then back to a 5 again once they switch to a different supplier. So at the end of the day, you're sitting there doing this, pulling your hair out, trying to figure out when your bottle was made. But you're not meant to know. These codes aren't even on these bottles for the end user to really do anything. They're just used for the supply side. But here we got maniacs now trying to figure out what bottle of Dior Homme they have, or what bottle of whatever they have, Burberry Brit or something. And I'm like, it's just, if you're going to do designers, if you're going to do commercial fragrances, it's much easier to use heuristics. And heuristics is basically, you can look up the word and define it if you want to, but it's more along the lines of you're using things that identify traits rather than strict numerical identification. So like, for example, if you're going to take a heuristic method to identify your bottle, is there a barcode? Yes, it's after a certain date. No barcode before a certain date. Does it have a green dot? Does it not have a green dot? Do you know the different periods of manufacture? Is this a Sanofi? Is this an Inter Parfums? Is this a, yada, yada, yada.
Jacqueline
you can also,
Cochran. I don't know why her name just popped up.
Jacqueline Cochran, but you know what I'm saying.
Cochran. Wait, can I do a quick PSA? Just hold that thought. Quick PSA, courtesy of our friend We Are Sentient. We currently have, that's not the one. This is the one. We currently have what it looks to be in this. I might not be accurate. I'm just doing a tally. We have 26 people who have hit the thumbs up, 25. If you could just hit the like button, it does help this YouTube channel. It helps the algorithm. It helps more people see these archived live streams and videos. So kindly hit the thumbs up. We have 36 people tuned in right now. Let's see if we can reach 40 likes in the next couple of minutes. Thank you very much. And back to you, Derek.
Yeah, so like the heuristic method is just when we're talking about a designer fragrance that could be manufactured by 5 or 6 different distributors and compounders over a decade, 2 decades. The fact that it says Dior on the bottle or whatever brand, Versace, for example, they go to the lowest bidder or whoever or highest bidder. They will constantly switch out who is manufacturing their fragrance for them. The formula is owned by the oil house, granted, whoever that is, IFF, Givaudan, Firmenich, Robertet, Simrise, whatever. But the compounders are always changing. The bottlers are always changing. The distributors are always changing. So the batch code thing doesn't really, it's not efficient for that. You're better off using addresses, packaging changes, distributor changes. Again, 3 ingredients versus long list versus does it have a green dot or not, barcode or not. That stuff is just so much simpler and easier and more obvious to use for designer and commercial fragrances that trying to figure out whether you have an ABC 1, 2, 3 or a DEF 4, 5, 6. That's just, like I said, that's just, at that point, you're just giving yourself a headache for no reason, especially because those numbers and letters don't often correlate to anything outside of that individual producer. So if Inter Parfums made all those bottles for that 10-year period, that matrix only applies for that specific manufacturer, not anything before or anything after. Mm-hmm.
So now...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rachel.
I was going to say really quickly, now you all see, if you haven't already, why Derek is one of our great fragrance minds and intellects and professors. And because this is everything he says is exactly right. It's so complex. And just if you don't know what heuristics is and you don't want to look it up, it's something that comes from cognitive neuroscience. It basically just means use your experiences, your experiential inferences and best guesses, just like you said, to make shortcuts to make the best decisions you can for yourself, just based on your experience.
It's absolutely brilliant that we even bring up this concept, and thank you for that, Derek. And it also it highlights sort of this reductionist approach to imparting value onto fragrance as well. And the importance, as a lot of people in the chat are they're making a good point in the chat as well, that all these other details that really give us a clue as to the actual time and place, and like when people say you got to get the Cosmere version, it's like, well, which Cosmere version? Because there's going to be several versions that were produced by Cosmere. Who has actually determined which Cosmere is the best Cosmere? Who's the authority on that? There's some of us out there are dedicated to that. I'm not dedicated to that. I'll get whatever I feel is satisfying to my nose and seems to be as good of a representation of a fragrance as possible. So I think there's some excellent points being made. The address for a certain producer, for sure, you could see that change from, within a couple of years, it goes from one address to another. The distributor goes from one address to another. The producer, all these different things. So, when you hear somebody say the one that you need to get is the one made by, this such and such, or this such, it's subjective. It really is subjective. I have, I always have people, for example, I posted my version of Armani, which was produced in the 90s. And you're always going to have that one person who says, you need to get the deep vintage from Helena Rubinstein from when it was first released. And, it's not that I don't appreciate the information, but we also have to consider some things here. And one of the things that I consider is age. Age is such an important factor in this. If I can find something that hasn't aged for as long and seems to be as close to what the proper representation of that fragrance is, and it smells good to me, I'm going to go for that. I'm going to go for the bottle that's probably about 30 years old rather than the one that's over 40 years old, if I can. Obviously, in some situations, that's not going to be possible, especially fragrances that were discontinued 40 or more years ago. But if you had something that was still in production for decades after that, it probably would make more sense to get something that hasn't really been affected by the ravages of time. Derek, what are your thoughts on that? And you, Rachel, as well, of course. We could all talk about this topic.
Well, okay. So for me, I guess it's all context dependent. Like they like, if you're a fan of Star Trek Discovery, the first season, the captain said that principles are for soldiers, context is for kings. So I kind of take to that, and it depends on the brand individually. Yeah. Like, for example, when I'm hunting Avon, I know that you can have an Avon that's been in the box, never had air in the bottle, never been opened, sat in a closet somewhere because grandma used to sell back in the 60s. Literally a 50, 60-year-old bottle of perfume that's perfectly kept, because until you take it out of the box and crack that ancient handle open, it's never had oxygen in it. So that would be fine. But like you said, a designer with a spray nozzle that could have been pumped a handful of times, there is some actual air introduced to that bottle, that could be an iffier proposition.
Oh, yeah, totally. I just want to cut you off for a second. I'm sorry, Derek. I just want to make sure I'm giving some props to some folks here. We have the wonderful Professor Value here. We know him from Base Notes. And we all do that. We all use the distributor. I didn't want to sort of poo-poo the idea of following distributor. But I think it's, as a general rule, you can kind of gauge, when it was released from that. So I didn't want to give the impression that I was what's the word I'm looking for? Like dismissing that as a certain criterion for finding probably the most desirable formulation, but it only kind of is one piece of the puzzle. But great to see you, my friend. Always appreciate your support and the chats that I have with you. We do have a lot of stuff going on in the chat here, which is exciting. I wanted to just get a couple of star comments. We have a Scott Hamula here, who's also mentioning, mostly looking at the distributor lately, which I think might actually be the same person. Sorry, Scott. I was like, I think there's somebody else who said something quite similar. It is just you with two different accounts. Nah. Believe there rumblings about the different millésimes of Tabac Tabou. I haven't seen much conversation or outrage for it. I didn't really care. I just found a bottle that was a good deal, and whatever I smelled in that bottle was fan-fucking-tastic. So I haven't heard much about like which bottle is the best vintage. So hey, what you don't know doesn't hurt you, I guess. So if you already have a bottle and you love it, I would just say just go with
exactly.
that. Yeah, we've talked about that, Derek. Like with
no one has to love your bottle but you. So,
yeah.
And I really hate it. This is more of a base notes thing than a Fragrantica thing. I don't really hang out there anyway, but there are people that will buy a vintage fragrance on base notes, right? And it's whatever they can get their hands on because it's discontinued. It's really expensive. They lucked out and got a bottle. And they'll be like, I got this bottle of Czar or something. And I'm not going to say who it is, but you know who it is, will come in there and just completely crap all over them because they don't have the oldest possible bottle. And only the very first one that was made the very same day the thing was released is the valid one. All the rest of them are pretenders and usurpers, and you're an idiot for liking this, and just get out of here, kid. We don't want you here. All this hostile stuff. And meanwhile, the kid is just like, but I like this. It smells good. What's wrong? What did I do? Like, they get just completely dumped on. And I only have one person on the whole site on my ignore list, and it's that person.
Yeah.
Because that person is just so toxic and so gatekeepery, and I feel so sorry for anybody who wades in there, who buys a vintage that isn't of that person's approval, because they will write like a 10-page college thesis on why this person is wrong and shouldn't like their fragrance. And I'm just like...
It's intense. It's like pathological.
It's intense.
Like and they have no sense of humor either. And I think this is the same one I think that was talking about Van Cleef and Arpels Porom too.
Yes.
Yeah. It's already discontinued, my people. Like, get whatever bottle you can. They all smell great. I've smelled different samples from different time periods. And I will always use this word to describe when people talk about the versions. The differences are negligible, people. Most of the time, it's negligible. You're not like missing out this whole FOMO thing about you've got to have this version because, and I know that we're going to have detractors going to say, but the Charles of the Ritz version of Kouros, blah, blah, blah. Really, it's a matter of like personal taste, personal preference. I actually don't really like the earliest Kouros. I don't. First of all, because every sample that I've smelled must have been aged to the point where I think there's an imbalance, and a lot of those top notes are gone. And I think what's lovely about Kouros is that you had those very aldehydic, sharp, herbal sort of top notes, that
white florals in the heart,
white
and all
florals
that
and the lavender. That really that's the balance. That's what makes it a whole and complete creation. So I kind of prefer, if I were to do like a vintage, I do this. I always say the 90s is a sweet spot because the 90s is before there were a lot of changes. The 90s version. And the top notes are more likely to be retained. So yeah, you have that. But Derek, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that Pierre Bourdon actually doesn't like the original formula because he actually had an interview. It was a subtitled interview. He was speaking in French, but he literally said in the interview, unfortunately, it's private now. You can't access it. It was on some educational site for a while. But he literally says in the interview that he was afraid of Charles of the Ritz evaluator. He was afraid of the evaluator because every time he would come back with the mod and she would smell it and go, I want more musk. It was like the sketch from SNL with Christopher Walken. He's like, I've got a fever. And the only prescription is more cowbell. Well, she kept sending it back to him and saying, more animalis, add more musk. He got to the point where he was afraid to give the formula to her because he's afraid she was going to say more. And eventually, I guess, it reached the point where she was happy with it. But he actually, in the interview, he said when they went back to do Fresher in 92, 93, he was given the opportunity when he was making Fresher to also reformulate the original so the two would be parity with each other. And he said that 90s version of Koros that followed Frashur is his preferred formula because he got to take things to where he had wanted them back in 81 all along, but had to, like I said, dial up the Animalis to like here. So his preferred version is that 90s version. I can't speak on later ones because he was no longer involved after that, but you know, those early 90s, I guess that would be Sanofi era maybe, or the very last of the Squib era, but.
And we haven't even begun to talk about the actual materials, the harvest.
No.
I mean, Derek, you made a really intelligent comment, like comparing the whole Creed batch bro thing to wine. And you know, I'm sure because we were not in those houses, you know, that information is not made publicly available unless you hear just like Derek did through these stories, through documentaries, etc. But I am positive there are years where yes, one could argue hypothetically that most of the time the first version of a fragrance could be considered closest to the, you know, the version in a creator's mind. But however, you know, that's going to change with time. With, say, there's a lot of rose and perhaps it's a vintage, they actually used a lot of rose, but you know, the quality of the harvest, of the materials, of how it was processed, processing techniques, all of that changes constantly with time. What's available, what's not available, how much they use, how much, I mean, it's just, there's so much that we don't know about that changes completely, right? I mean, you can't step in the same stream twice, right? And so because we don't have access to that information, which is a shame. I mean, honestly, I think fragrances will be much more interesting than the PR crap, you know, the whole like romance novel book cover, you know, commercials that we get. I'd much rather actually know the details of what happens in fragrance houses and with the supply chain. Like, that's so fascinating, and I wish we could know more about it because, you know, maybe, you know, like, you know, like a beautiful Guerlain, like Xiii or something. Maybe there was a brilliant lavender harvest at some point in history that, like, wow, these bottles are like some of the greatest Xiii ever. And we don't know about it because only the people working behind the scenes would know. And it's just, there's so much we don't know, right? Is I think the point that we're kind of making. And I wish we could. It would be like, I wish there was more journalism in fragrance so we could learn about the actually interesting stuff, right?
Well, I think that's what we're here for. And I think that's why we have things like Nay Magazine, and we have the great journalists of Nay and their Naturals notebooks and the periodical, and a lot of us who are really interested in peeling back the layers. And for those who are diehard fragrance enthusiasts, now we want to know all the different chemotypes of lavender that go into a fragrance, and whether the lavender is grown in Provence or it's grown in Bulgaria, you know, and whether it's a more herbal or a more fruity or a more floral lavender. And then you can replace that with anything. Like rosemary has different chemotypes. Frankincense. So Alexandra, we had an excellent conversation, and it would behoove anyone who's tuned in right now to listen to the conversation that I had with Alexandra a couple of weeks ago, because it was just phenomenal. And we talked about even down to things like resins, that you have different myrrhs that come from different varietals of myrrh trees. We have different frankincenses that come from different species of olibanum, which is a whole range of trees. So you have all of these different things that come into play. And you're absolutely right, Rachel. The differences are not necessarily they don't always have to do with a reformulation because whoever decided to water it down. It could, just like you said, have to do with the harvest that previous year, the expense, because these materials, they can skyrocket in cost in one year, and then there could be a bumper crop the next year. So all these different variables coming into play. So what is Victoria's Secret? Hello, sounds like she was being very willful with that musk and not considering what the perfume still needed regarding Kouros. That's what I think, you know, that is so highly dosed in the Animalis base. The Animalis base is the core of what makes Kouros so notorious and so compelling to people, is that Animalis base. But the thing is there's sometimes too much of a good thing. And that's another thing that I think, it's like when it reaches that threshold, then you're kind of missing out on some of the other nuances. That's another thing with perfume too. You have too much of one thing, it's gonna bury and dampen other things. Nick S says, but that's fallacious because you're not going to necessarily like the one closest to the perfumer's intention anyways. I think that I'm following the context of that, and I do sort of, that's also a thing too. Do we really, is our mission, this is like how nerdy we've become as frag heads, is our mission to really ultimately enjoy what the perfumer's intention was, or is it just so it just so happens to be that our favorite is the one that the perfumer regrets making? Think about it. I mean, there are going to be some perfumers who they worked on a brief and they're like, okay, here's this bullshit. Here you go. You can sell it. And we might love it. And they might think it's one of the worst creations they ever made. So think about that as well. Catch My Whiff. I have a couple of frags that have a green non-smoky frankincense that is amazing. Catch My Whiff. Definitely check out that archive stream with me and Alexandra Helwani. It was the previous Effluvium. You'll love it. Anuj, hi there, my friend. Holy Trinity. Lovely to see you, Anuj. Lifetime supply of Givenchy Patel.
Yeah, I can fill a bathtub now with Monsieur de Givenchy and take a bath in it thanks to this man. So, yeah.
I have so many lovely little minis from Anuj. When I order something from him, his generosity has no end. Thank you, Anuj. You have saved me the trouble of even blind buying stuff because you send me these wonderful little minis.
Also, the Roger and Gallet L'Homme shave foam. If you look like you shave, so you need to get you a can of the Roger and Gallet L'Homme shave foam from this man, and then the associated like aftershave stuff too, the whole shebang. But you need to do it. I'm telling you. It's great.
Oh my gosh. Anyone out there who doesn't know Anuj and Enchanté Perfumes in Canada, I have 2 entire shelves of just Anuj fragrances. You have to know this person. You have to shop there. It's just one of those, actually, it's one of the rare places that sells vintage fragrances that you can count on, that is trustworthy, that, Anuj, who owns and runs the store, is knowledgeable, again, caring, trustworthy, like a real actual partner in the fragrance community for buyers, for enthusiasts, etc. And you absolutely must know him and his store. So just, if you don't, look it up. Enchanté. Is it enchantéperfumes.com or enchanté.com?
I think it is enchantéperfumes.com. Am I right, Anuj?
Or .ca, maybe? I don't remember.
I think it is under a .com. I usually have it in the description. If I don't, if somebody wants to just put the link into the description, we're going to take a very brief intermission, and all 3 of us are going to be right back in about a minute. We'll see you soon. And welcome back. Let's bring in the other 2. And I want to get back to the chat here. We have a very lively chat here. It's really happy to see a lot of folks are tuned in. 34 people tuned in at the moment. Empty Sense says, I am spoiled and had the luxury of wearing some 80s and 90s formulas. Makes you a tad picky, but still love some modern day mixes. Hey, there are some great fragrances that are still in production. If your sweet spot is the 70s and 80s, no matter what time period, there are still some great fragrances that are currently in production today that, that are comparable or it could be indistinguishable from some classics. My scent of the evening happens to be from Patricia Nicolai, Odalisque. Oh, goodness. This is such a piercing, in the most wonderful manner, a really piercing jasmine and crisp, bitter greenness and lily of the valley, and just an enduring mossiness. New bottle, newly produced. Let's dispel the oak moss myth, people. You can still use oak moss in a fragrance, and you can use oak moss even with atronol at a low percentage. And many perfumers use atronol-free oak moss. And the truth is, oak moss is a high-impact material, and it is noticeable in a composition between 0.005 and 0.1%, well within the restrictions of using oak moss, and can be easily extended upon by many other different materials to boost it, to leverage it, to flesh it out. Honestly, I love these conversations, and I'm going to get into the oak moss spiel, and I'm sure, Derek, you could probably have a few things to say about this too. There are these people who have actually said things like, I think that Quorum had 5% oak moss. And let me tell you something. There is no composition. There is a composition where there's 5% oak moss. You're probably going to be overwhelmed by it because oak moss is very tenacious. It's a very high impact material. The mossiest smelling fragrance that I have is actually from L'Agence Paris. And I know, Rachel, you recall my sharing this. It's like rarer than rocking horse shit, rarer than hen's teeth.
Rocking horse shit?
Yes.
Hold on a second.
It's called oak moss.
I was like...
I'm going to bribe you one day to send me a decant.
I think I do have one I can send you.
Oh my gosh, I'm dying to try it. You guys, this is sorry. You should tell more. It's amazing. It's like amazing.
It is okay. It is the most oak moss smelling oak moss fragrance. It is at the precipice of being too much. Like if you love oak moss, if you pretty much would love to wear pure oak moss on you with some things to kind of enhance it, like tarragon and licorice and lavender to kind of spruce it up, gussy it up a little bit. It is unbelievable. It is the most oak mossy smelling fragrance. It's one of the few fragrances where they put the oak moss front and center, and it is not merely a supporting character in a fragrance that is used as a fixative. It is the fragrance. Unbelievable stuff. But getting back to Odalisque, Patricia Nicolai has the oak moss in it and does some of the trickery and some of the magic that an accomplished perfumer like she does, like she is, to make the oak moss really apparent in the dry down. So truth be told, you can have the oak moss experience on brand new fragrances, barring any restrictions. Don't listen to the nonsense about it. I feel like I still need to dispel that myth. Derek, do you have any thoughts on the whole oak moss thing?
I was telling somebody else. I think it was also a thread on Base Notes, because that's where you want to go if you want to actually have serious grown-up conversation about perfume. You want to go to Base Notes. Don't go to Fragrantica. Go to Base Notes.
Hi.
I was in there, and I was telling somebody that they've been using Varanis for years to boost oak moss accords because they know that if they go over a certain percentage of oak moss, even before IFRA, even like in the 80s, they knew that you would just straight up get a rash. You would just straight up get a rash if they used too much oak moss. So they created Evernal, aka Varanis, for the specific reason to take what oak moss they could safely use and just kind of like base boost it. Yeah. And even the oldest versions of some of those 80s fragrances that everybody goes, oh, they're so mossy. Oh, it's you're smelling Evernal, my dude. You're not smelling like 10% oak moss. 10% oak moss would murder your skin.
Oh my God. I have heard some people who are very respected, who are obsessed with vintages, saying things like, yeah, this has 10%, 20% oak moss. I'm like, dude, stop it. Do your research. And yes, Avernil has been used in perfumery since the mid 20th century. I think it started being used in the 50s, if I'm not mistaken. It was developed, and it is used to extend the oak moss, because Derek is absolutely right. Even before all the big bad IFRA came along and it restricted it down to 0.1%. Do you know, I think, and somebody could correct me who knows more of the history of the restrictions, I don't even think that the restriction was that much more than that. Like, it wasn't even like that much to begin with before they restricted it more. So all they needed to do was just sort of like fill in the gaps,
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. John Beeble's here. Hi. Hello, JJ, Rachel, and Varanis. JJ, I owe you a message. No worries. I hope you had a fabulous time at Exance. A question for this great panel. What piece of info do you think has helped expand your olfactive appreciation the most? Rachel, I want to pass it to you first. I want to allow you the opportunity to chat. Respond to that.
So the thing that immediately jumps to mind actually is the Perfumery Code of Ethics. If you haven't heard of it, I recommend visiting the website and looking over it. This is kind of a project that was mostly started, I believe, by Christophe Laudemiel, who is a perfumer who's really done it all. He's been on all sides of the industry, a master perfumer, wonderful person, creates great fragrances. And so understanding, knowing what I don't know, right? I'm trying to figure out what I know, what I know I don't know, and what I don't know I don't know. If that makes sense, if you remember that old Clinton thing. The Perfumery Code of Ethics helped me to figure that out, to kind of get a grasp conceptually on kind of what is just like stagecraft, or PR in fragrance, and what are the actual real facts, and how does the industry work? I think that has helped me to learn the most in about fragrance, intellectually, viscerally, doing literally just smelling raw materials, like the old school Jean Carl method, where you take a material and you smell it. You smell it for 24 hours, you smell it for however long, and then you take that material and you combine it with one other material in various ratios for a very, very, very long time. So doing those two things has taught me the most. And the people at IAO, the Institute of Art and Olfaction, are a great resource. I recommend any of their classes. In fact, I recommend any of their classes. And in fact, Darren Allen teaches amazing classes, and exactly what I was just talking about, where you take, Darren taught me this actually, where you take a material and then you do the Jean Carl method, and you blend it with one other material, but at very specific ratios, like 25%, 50%, 75%, 100%, etc. And really spend time to see how materials impact one another at various ratios. It'll blow your mind how much you can learn just from that simple exercise over time if you do it consistently and repeatedly. And please visit Darren Allen's Instagram and sign up for one of his classes. They're amazing. And the Institute of Art and Olfaction. That's a long answer, but there's so much to learn.
I thought it was an excellent answer, if I may say so myself. And I will piggyback on what you said about familiarizing yourself with materials and dabbling with them. I think that if you've reached a certain level where you just really want to understand the mechanics and the inner workings of a perfume, whether it is in your perfume writing, if you want to write reviews or just write commentary on fragrance. And I've mentioned this before, get yourself a small collection of reference raw materials, and they're not hard to get. You can even walk into an organic grocer or Whole Foods. They have essential oils in there. You can pick up a few of them. You can start a little collection as a reference, so you really know what you're looking for in a fragrance. And it is really true that once you start to develop a familiarity with the essential oils, or even like samples of solvent extracted absolutes, samples of synthetic materials, over time you'll be able to identify notes, accords, whole themes in a perfume, or you'll know what people mean when they talk about ambroxan, because you'll have a diluted sample of ambroxan. And then you might have a big aha moment. Oh, eureka.
I've done that.
This exactly, where you thought that some other material was the ambroxan, but it isn't. The material that you've been accusing of being so awful in a fragrance actually isn't that, but maybe something else like norlimbinol, or it could be Isoe Super, or dare I say it could be something like a natural material that just doesn't jibe well with you. And you think that it's something else. A lot of people who think that they love oak moss, they end up really liking the vetiver and patchouli that's mixed together, and not the oak moss, because when they smell the oak moss in isolation, they realize, no, it's not that. And then they'll smell other things when they blend. Jean Carl method, absolutely. Also, If you like to collect books, there's a lot of old perfume books. Louis Appel has books of bases. I should actually do a whole stream where I just go through all the different books in my library here. There's one book that I have right here, and I don't know if this is still in print, but early on, wow. Rachel, you had some you were sparkle, Neely Sparkle, perfume and flavor materials of natural origin from Stefan Arctander. Stefan Arctander has some great books for reference. This is when I first started studying perfume making. This is when I was really into doing natural perfume. I was, I read the books by Mandy Aftel, and I was buying all these natural materials. So there's tons of literature too. So as I've mentioned before, I have kind of an edge because I studied perfume making for a while. It doesn't mean you have to really go that far, but just, collect a few things, like get some bergamot essential oil. Now you know how to detect that. Get some vetiver, get some patchouli, get some frankincense, get some sandalwood, and then it really all starts to come together. And you'll be surprised how things start to come, that start to pop out at you. Derek, it's your turn to answer this.
Oh, I did in the chat, but I'll scroll back up. And,
Derek is multitasking here, and I'm really impressed with that. I think he's the only guest who has that ability to interact in the chat and cover some bases when we're in the middle of talking, and I think that is really admirable of you. I live with two other people, and they also require my attention for reasons. So I'm used to having to do three things at once and cook dinner and clean house and do laundry and all that all at the same time. I am my mother's son, unfortunately, so I inherited all that from her. So I would make somebody a good husband someday, but right now, no dice. But anyway, so my answer was, I've smelled. Oh no, that's the wrong comment. Hold on a second. Let me scroll up. Okay, it's a little further up here. I can actually share it if you tell me where it begins. I identify accords. Is it this?
No, that's a joke. I was talking about Honda Accords.
Wait, I'm any ground of that.
Yeah. I said, I'm going to paraphrase, but I said basically that the biggest piece of information for me when I was first starting out, like when I was super green around the ears, is learning that there were actually genres and that there were actually perfumers who had signature styles. And because I come from a musical background, I collect music. I have played in metal bands and punk bands in the early 2000s. I have a musical categorical mind, of organizing by genre and style of guitarist and what a Telecaster sounds like versus what a Stratocaster sounds like, humbuckers versus single coils, all that stuff. So when I learned that perfume also had genres like that, and that individual perfumers were known for certain accords, like the Hug Me Accord by Sonia Grojsman, or the way that Runitska liked to use certain rotted fruit accords, or the way Bourdon likes to use the hydromercinol and Kalone, or the way Jean-Claude Ellena likes to use ISOE and build out transparent accords. You start to put all the pieces together, and you can smell the fragrance made by a perfumer and go, yep, that's that perfumer. And then furthermore, you can say, I like this particular vibe or this particular signature accord that this perfumer brings. So I'm going to search out other fragrances, regardless of brand, regardless of house, that this perfumer has done, because that facet that perfumer brings to the table is what I like, right? Just like with genres. I like fougères or I like shippers, so I know if this is marketed as a fougère, I should probably sample this because it's probably going to be in my wheelhouse. Not always, not 100%. There's never a 0% chance of getting killed by a giraffe, but, it helps guide you and cut out a lot of white noise and blind testing of things that you might otherwise not enjoy.
Yeah.
So,
Ricky Tomato says, I'm amazed at how many formulations have high levels of Hedione and ISOE Super. One of my favorite perfumers, Jean-Claude Ellena. A number of his fragrances have a very high percentage of Hedione or ISOE Super. He is a minimalist by design in his approach. Poivre Samarkand, I think, is like 80% ISOE Super. And while people might say, well, that's a ripoff, no, because that's not how art works. Because if he's using a very specific percentage of this material, what is in the remaining 20%? What is the magic that's going on in that remaining 20% that results in something beautiful like Poivre Samarkand? It's true. And Aizui, Super, and Hedion do some beautiful, beautiful things when they're in the right hands, when they're in the right perfumer. And it is true. It is absolutely true. You'd be amazed at some of the that the formulas and what goes on, how very little of one thing shows up in a formula, but can be so impactful in the composition. And then there are other things that are like blenders where there can be 40% of it, but it's just a blender. It blends everything else together. It holds everything in suspension. Fascinating, fascinating stuff. Sadly, our friend needs to crash because he has work in the morning. He is, I believe, 5 hours ahead, if I'm not mistaken. And I didn't realize that this was Kate either. I didn't put two and two together to realize that What is Victoria's Secret is Kate. And we know Kate, she is a perfumer, one of our friends. I hunt down favorite perfumers as well for their DNA. Yeah. I love to see the trend in perfumers. I love to see how, a certain theme, what they will do is they will do variations on that theme and they'll carry it to one place or another. And speaking of that, one great perfumer is Bernard Chant, which is going to give us a segue to our next topic, because Bernard Chant composed a few of the Estee Lauders originally. The Estee Lauders that are now part of this revised line. Derek, you mentioned this.
Sorry, I hate that whole the legacy collection thing. I just want
the legacy collection. What happened here? What's going on here? What is this all about? These fragrances that were always known to be midline, they weren't like ultra luxury. I mean, they weren't drugstore fragrances, but they were always somewhat accessible, at least to the middle class. And now what do we have? Now what's going on?
We have some hollowed out, ghoulish versions of these fragrances that are selling for literally 4 times what they retailed for. And you're getting objectively inferior fragrances for 400% markup. So it's almost like, I don't know how graphic I can be in this chat, but it's like they're handing you the lube when they take your credit card from you. So.
It's ever so eloquently put.
Yeah.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Frederick Malle has sold his soul to the company store. I guess he broke bad with LVMH. His former Dior family ties must have finally run out. So he gave his soul to Estee Lauder, and now he's just telling us that we need lighter, more transparent versions of Knowing and Azure because the originals weren't already masterpieces. And he blamed it on the pre-made bases.
Yeah!
Not understand what pre-made bases are. Like,
when I read
we simplified the formulas. They relied so heavily on these pre-made bases, so we fixed that for you.
Yeah. When I read that, I was floored. I was absolutely floored. I was absolutely floored because pre-made bases built the foundation of perfumery in the 20th century. Without those pre-made bases, we wouldn't have had these iconic fragrances of that time. They were an integral part of it. It's like, I don't even know why, it's just, I can't even wrap my head around it. It's just it is so cynical. It is so insulting to the consumer as well. And it's so alienating to the consumer as well, because you imagine those who have been loyal to Azure and to Knowing and to Estee and so on and so forth. To have this happen, and because I think that the other versions, if I'm not mistaken, Derek, are not available anymore.
They're all discontinued.
So now this is what you have. And it is now at it's now priced for luxury. And who is spending that kind of money who wants that version, a tepid version of Knowing or Azure?
I apologize. I just want to play devil's advocate for a minute.
Oh, okay. We need hot takes. It's good. It's good.
Just for my take. Yeah. Well, I think what this tells you is that that the previous original fragrances were an incredible value and were in fact probably underpriced, or they were they could compete with perhaps fragrances on a much more luxe level, right? Because the original fragrances are brilliant, right? I will say that I do, and I agree with you that there is some BS going on here, because it is a price grab in a lot of ways, and mostly a price grab, right? They want to create a certain line for a certain market for economic reasons. But I will say there is something to the argument that in general, tastes have, and I'm curious what you guys think about this, tastes have moved on, and that the modern customer tends to want a little bit more legibility, right? And I have to say that because I've smelled them, I have to say that I actually quite enjoyed Anne Filippo's version of Private Collection. They don't really like the other ones, but I do think that she did a great job with it. I wouldn't like replace the old version of Private Collection with a new version, but I think it's a beautiful perfume in and of itself. I mostly agree with you guys, right? That this is people are not getting better quality for more money. That's not happening. But I will, like, I kind of, I liked Private Collection. Genuinely, I think it's a good fragrance that she did. But in a way, I understand it. Like, just, like, it signals to me that the original versions were, worth more than they were sold for, right? They were great, right? And that's wonderful. And they're still available. You can still go on eBay and, and buy the classic versions easily, right? But then also I can see how their structures are classic and are vintage. And I think it's intellectually interesting to have a quote unquote modernized, updated version, but I wouldn't get rid of the old ones. I'd keep both, right?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
I think that's the thing I'm most disappointed with is that the original, for lack of a better explanation, were discontinued, and what we're only left is with the modern legacy collection. Yeah. Oh, but I wanted to get back to this though. On a lighter note, if I buy a 100 milliliter bottle, but the sticker says 80% volume, how many milliliters did I actually purchase? I feel like this is a trick SAT question because it's so obviously a 100 milliliter quantity. Yeah. Thank you for asking that question. I'm glad that Derek could help you out with that. I think that we could help out a lot of people with their questions here. So that's what we're here. We're a resource. If you're not sure, we can help you out. And Derek says nothing got past demos or private press CDs for his 3 death metal bands: Darkest Dreams, Cryptic, and Somnus. So maybe perhaps we are a little hard on this line, and but I think that I just still kind of feel, I don't know, like what it begs the question of how much is the cost of a perfume? How much is it that we should be selling a perfume for? And maybe just in this marketplace, that is, the expectation is that that higher quality materials and more competent and more esteemed perfumers means that it is warranted in spending $300 or $400 in a perfume. But I think that there could be some lively debate on that as well. I don't know, Derek, what do you think? What do you think about? We've talked about this before. We actually talked about this a long time ago on one of the Instagram streams that we did. But the pricing of perfume, I remember you talked about the concept of a Veblen good.
Yes.
Yes. And why don't you share with us a little bit what this concept is? This is something I learned in economics quite some time ago, and I think that Derek would be well suited to sort of elaborate on this, and as far as luxury pricing.
Okay, so the thing that people don't realize is that even your basic commercial, like your just any designer or other brand that retails for about 100, 120 bucks these days, you're only getting anywhere from about $1 to $2 worth of actual finished perfume once you factor in the oil and the dilution thereof. And you also factor in the perfumer getting paid. Everything factors into that $1 to $2 per 100 mil in that bottle. That's the sheer economy of scale we're dealing with these big houses, is that even after everyone gets paid, including the high-end perfumers like Alberto Morias or whoever, even after all that, it's still only about $2-ish at the high end of actual perfume in that $120 bottle. The rest will be, of course, the cost of the bottle, the cost of the bottling, the cost of the advertising, of the marketing, distribution. Everyone gets their cut. But at the end of the day, the actual profit margin on a $120-ish bottle of perfume is still about 90%. 90% profit margin on that $120 bottle. So when you go even higher than that, right, into your 200s, your 300s, sometimes you might break $3. And a industry perfumer friend of mine named Harry Fremont, you've probably heard him. He's done CK1. He's done a lot of stuff in the 90s. Very well-known guy. He told me himself that $3, you'd be surprised. Sometimes the lower-end brands like your Zaras, like your Avons, like your other drugstore brands are more likely to pay the higher dollar amount than the Dior's, than the Versace's, then those clients will lowball. So sometimes you get more money in oil in your Avons, in your Codys, than you're getting in your Burberrys, than you're getting in your Armanis and all that stuff. But even then, it's still about $3 at most. So when you're getting into those $300 a bottle, $400 a bottle, that's just even more. So imagine more than 90% profit. Now you're talking, it's ridiculous. So it's like, if you really want to feel like you're getting what you pay for, you have to buy the artisanal fragrances, guys, the independent perfumers. They're the ones that are going to give you more dollar per ounce in that bottle than those big brands are. So that's why it's a hustle to me. It's a luxury hustle because the brass caps, the heavy crystal bottles, the etching on the bottles, the fake crystals on the caps, the big heavy like balsa wood freaking coffre boxes that open up like the egg from the alien cocoon. All that crap is just crap. The fake velvet that the bottle sits in, whatever. The bags, the little drawstring bags, the little Crown Royal bags that comes in. That's just crap. You're still only getting $2 to $3 at most worth of perfume, and you're paying $400 for that.
Yeah, I know. I really so for all the fragrances and and I own many of them. Everybody knows this. I have never spent more than $330 on a single bottle of a fragrance, and that was because it was a very rare vintage fragrance that I had long been on a quest to look for, and I had finally found it, and it just so happened to be that price, and I just couldn't wait any longer. I'm not. The Chanel's are probably up there, but I would still try to find some way of getting a discount on it. I just don't believe. I really just don't believe in spending more than that. My belief is if it's retailing for more than that, I'm going to wait until I get a discount. I'm going to wait until I find an opportunity to pay less. And if it's just prohibitive, if it is just so exclusive, like a Henri Jacques or something like that, I'm fine with a sample. Like, I'm not going to spend $800, $1,000. I mean, it's just, I just feel like that is just, you're buying that concept of luxury. You're buying the
Veblen goods.
That is the
consumption.
Exactly. That's the Veblen good. It is like when you buy a Bentley. A Bentley doesn't really cost, $80,000 more than a Mercedes Benz.
Try like $300,000, $400,000.
But yeah, that's right. I don't even know the pricing. That's how
$500,000 for some of those.
But is it really
Derek,
cost that much?
I'm sorry. How do you spell
the
word, the term that you were using? A what good?
Veblen goods.
VBLEN.
Oh,
it's
I've never heard of it.
It's a Gilded Age economist named Thorsten Veblen.
Yeah.
Who coined the term conspicuous consumption and the goods. he said where the price justifies itself, like an Ouroboros. It's expensive because it's expensive.
Yeah.
And that justifies itself. So it's literally a circular logic that justifies the price.
That concept is so helpful. Like, I love it. Thank you for sharing that, and I'm glad to learn it. Thank you. That's fabulous.
Bear in mind, he was using that to describe perfumes of the 1910s and handbags and other things of the 1910s. He was describing that stuff back then. So he was aimed at like Parfums de Rosine and Guerlain and early Hermes and Louis Vuitton stuff. He was aimed at that stuff with that particular phrase. So if he were alive and could see what was going on now with all the influencers and the hype beast people and stuff on TikTok, he'd probably roll in his grave like 100,000 times. He would just be like...
We have a question from Sweet Milk. Derek, how do you approach a fragrance review or fragrance reviews? He had this question from earlier. Made sure to star it so we didn't lose it in the mix.
I made a joke about how I approach them carefully and don't make any loud noises so I don't get mauled by like a wild review. But I do it like the... but in all seriousness, I kind of have a format that I follow where I do a 3-paragraph. And the top paragraph is like exhibition, or exposition rather. Sorry, it can be exhibition too if you think my writing is that fancy. But it's exposition in the first paragraph, and then the second paragraph I do the actual analytical smelling and break down the fragrance, tell you how I feel about it, the performance, where I think you should use it if you take my advice or not. And then the last paragraph I just round it up, talk about the value proposition, talk about long-term stuff with the fragrance, and then I just put a thumbs up, neutral, thumbs down on it. So
very well then. If we could get some more likes, we currently have, it looks like there's 34 at the moment, at least from when I see keeping track of it, and we have 38 people tuned in. We still want to try to reach our goal of 40 likes. That means 6 more. If we could try to get 6 more, we'll try to reach 40. It'd be nice to reach 45 by the end of the stream. We have about 25 minutes. Maybe we'll run a little bit longer than 2 hours here, depending upon how the conversation goes. Let's see here. Yeah, I wanted to highlight this again. You know what? Yeah, Chanel is one of the few brands where I break down and spend just a little bit more than what I'm willing to spend. Same thing with Hermes. And so I wanted to point that out, that sometimes a little indulging is necessary. Dwayne, our little parakeet Dwayne, hopefully I'll still be alive in 40 years to attend all the collector's estate sales and get a good deal on these bottles. Yeah. Sometimes when I get a little bit of existential anxiety, and I start thinking about like what will happen, like what is going to happen to all of this? It's not going to matter to me anymore, but what will happen to all these things that I've collected? Are they really going to go home to a good place? Actually, if and not to get morbid, but I guess I do have a tendency of doing that sometimes. If I were to find out that I wasn't going to be of this world much longer, I would donate my collection maybe to the Institute of Art and Olfaction or something.
Why don't you give me all the rare fragrances I can't afford to buy? Why don't you be nice and do that? Give me all those lovely vintages that you have that I want that I'll never have. You can do that. Then you give the rest to science. I don't care. You
will be on my name. You'll be on my will. Your name will be on my will. I'm going to be writing my will one day, and you'll be on there, Derek. We'll make sure that you have a good portion of them. Just let me know which ones you want.
Like the Versailles Porum, the Portos, Balenciaga, the Lanvin stuff, all that stuff.
Okay.
The stuff that people in base notes go absolutely apeshit over.
I'll keep that in mind, my friend. But Kate says I meant for how inexpensive synthetic aroma chemicals are. Seeing perfumes priced over 100 is cringing. Yeah, but it does bring me back to Jean-Claude Ellena, though. I mean, but I don't know. I mean, if you really look at a formula and it has 80% ISOE super, and then we could kind of try to figure out how much each of those other materials cost. It really, it's worth considering. Like, do we really make that kind of limitation? It's an interesting concept to really think about. Like, do we really base it on the perfume material, the cost of perfume materials itself, or are we basing it on the final product as it has been executed by the perfumer? I know. I totally get it though. I mean, because if you know that a large portion of it is a material that is, just cents to the kilogram, it seems like it's a little overpriced. Hi, Clear. Great to see you here.
I feel like there's a difference between trying to find what is a genuine craft and value. I mean, I think we can have discussion about that. What is craft? What is value? What is artisanship? What is high quality materials? And I think we can have a discussion about that. But I think the thing that really is driving it crazy now, and the thing that feels so disingenuous and so like feels like we're being ripped off, is like, honestly, it's the conglomerates, right? It's like the multinationals that are literally, they're just there to pull value out. They're not there to add value. They're not there to add quality. They're just there to pull value away from the product, from the company, from everything. And that's the part that I'm like, ugh. It's what do you call the kind of animals that live off other animals?
Parasitic.
Parasites. It's a parasitic thing. And I think even in the end product, we feel it. We feel that parasitic relationship, and it's feeding off us too, right? And it doesn't feel good, right?
Has anybody recently read Luca Turn's summarization of his experience at Essence this year? Because it's pretty rich, his description of what he encountered there. There's a few passages that I wanted to read here. Give me a second. Oh, the overall impression was that there are still a lot of people who create a brand from a concept, astrology, music, the elements, the sea, figure out image, packaging, and pattern, and then fill the bottles with some indifferent swill. He has a way with words. Many of these outfits seem to be headed by online MBA types who dream of an exit strategy, i.e. being bought by a big brand, i.e. conglomerate. All but a tiny number will fail, and I could not care less. However, there seem to be more outfits than I expected doing high-quality fragrances, often with excellent natural materials and interesting compositions. I will review some soon. I thought he retired. He came out of retirement. He's back at the airport. Somebody knows my reference there. He was so eager to announce his departure, and now he's back. But I'm happy because I kind of like that his voice has returned.
I think someone wrote him a check to be there. That's what happened.
Oh, you think so?
I think someone wrote him a check to be there.
They wrote him a check and he couldn't refuse, and then he just shit all over it after it.
It's like Kiss. Kiss has been on their farewell tour for 25 years now.
Cher as well. Cher has had about 5 farewell tours. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is Luca Turin's like second or third farewell tour. He'll be back next year for another one.
He's already back. He might say farewell again by the end of the year. But I think that there is some credibility to what he said. I think that I probably would argue. I
like the guy. I do. He gets browbeaten too much for having real opinions, right? For having actual opinions. He gets browbeaten too much for having actual opinions. Even if I disagree with his opinions, the fact that he's confident enough to have those opinions is refreshing. People don't oftentimes have opinions like that. It's always either I like the thing or I refrain from commenting on the thing because I don't want my sponsor to pull my free bottles, right? He doesn't give 2 shits about free bottles. He says what he wants. No. And I like that about him.
I don't give a shit about free bottles either. And I have brands who are reaching out to me that cupcake brand, what the hell is it called? The House of Xiii.
Oh, God.
We really love the unique way that you describe.
I'm a relative nobody, and I had a brand selling those. I only have 500 subscribers, and I had that pheromone brand reaching out to me, the alpha male perfume brand, wanting to send me stuff. I'm like, I'm good. I'd rather stay poor than take your stuff. I'm good.
Pheromone brand? Okay.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of there's like more than one, so I don't know which one it was. There was like a half dozen of them, but they're all selling the same thing.
The only pheromone type fragrance that I'll touch is Marilyn Miglin's Pheromone and Pheromone for Men. Those
sold on QFC.
And even they didn't claim to have pheromones in them. So no, any fragrance that claims to have pheromones are going to help you attract a certain lover or companion. They're full of garbage. It is snake oil. And
Yeah.
I am very open-minded to things. I have a degree in a degree, like it's actually a degree. I have a certificate. I have a degree. Should just have a little mortarboard on. I have a certificate in clinical aromatherapy. I think that there is credible. It is a credible practice, especially when it applies to topical aromatherapy and diffusive aromatherapy for mood. But there are just certain things that are just absolute hogwash, and the whole pheromone thing is just absolute BS. I wanted to read the House of Xiii message that was sent to me. Dear Joseph, at House of Xiii, we deeply appreciate influencers like you. Influencers like you who consistently deliver exceptional
Pay
content.
my respects.
Exceptional content that perfectly aligns with our brand values. Your unique style and storytelling abilities make you an ideal partner for our upcoming collaboration. And we know what a collaboration is, right? We know what that means. Yeah. Could you kindly share your email with us so that we can provide you with further information? Core brand values, exceptional content, and influencer. I am not an influencer. I am not an influencer. At most, I guess you could call me a content creator because I'm creating content for the consumption of viewers or readers or whatever. But I'm not an influencer. I'm not in the market for that. But I still get funny little messages like that.
JJ, you're closer to a journalist, a scholar, like someone who truly cares, right? Like both of you are, and that's
all of us.
It's really important, right? It's
all of us.
It sets us apart. Yeah,
it sets us apart.
Definitely you guys. I'm learning. Definitely you guys.
The integrity is important. Integrity is important. I don't like to deceive people. I don't like it. I don't like the idea of trying to sell something that somebody doesn't need. Mm-hmm. Something that I can't stand behind. I can't add something I'm not. I don't really. That if it doesn't resonate with me, it doesn't connect with me. I don't care about the paycheck. I don't want to be paid to do that. It's dishonest. I already worked in one of my jobs several years ago. I worked for. I'm not going to mention the company, but we sold software, and I was aggressive in an aggressive sales environment, and there was a lot of pressure for me to sell things to people that they didn't really need it, and I was trying to convince them that they needed it, and some of these people were like, well, I'm kind of tight on money, I have a difficult time, with my finances, and I was still encouraged to try to get them to buy a subscription that probably was going to be a pretty heavy bill per month. Yeah. And I just promised myself I would never do that again. So I'm not a salesperson, no knocking sales if you do sales. So I'd like to be more on the critical side of things and just.
I was a Sears appliance salesman for 4 years, so I know all about psychological reciprocity and all of the tactics. Complimenting someone's intelligence and their choice to come in and talk to you, even though they haven't actually chosen anything yet. You compliment a choice they haven't yet made, and all the other psychological reciprocity tricks that you end up building up their bill. And next thing you know, they were only wanting a $400 washer, but they walk out with a $4,000 one instead. And delivery and 5-year service and all that stuff. Yeah. Filter subscription for the refrigerator, all that fun stuff. I did that for 4 years, and a little small piece of me died working there. I'll never get that piece back, but I know all about that. So that's why I can't be an influencer now. I can't do that again. I've already done that once. So.
And the saddest part too, and I know this is going to be a pretty bold statement to make, but a lot of these perfume fragrance content creators who are influencers couldn't fucking describe a fragrance to save their life, honestly. Like, they are mentioning that they're the ones that are saying this bourbon vanilla is smelling very boozy, and this bourbon geranium is smelling very boozy, and this bourbon vetiver is smelling very boozy, without not having a lick of knowledge about Madagascar.
Bourbon vetiver doesn't smell like bourbon. It's just a type of vetiver that is prized for its superior quality. Case closed. It's alongside Haitian vetiver. I've got a vetiver video that's not released yet. It's in the hopper. Several of the things that you talked about earlier, like my frag bro video and all those aren't released yet. So we're kind of doing a preamble by talking about them here. But I've got a vetiver video in the hopper that goes over that same thing you just mentioned. That bourbon vetiver is just a type of vetiver.
Yeah.
Bourbon vanilla, it could smell somewhat boozy because vanilla absolute does smell kind of boozy, but it has nothing to do with bourbon. It's not whiskey, not bourbon. It has to do with the island.
Us Americans, we're not great with geography.
No way. No. But the thing is we have all of this information at our disposal in within the very devices that are in front of us. And it doesn't take much research to just kind of even fake it till you make it. And some people, they can't even fake it till they make it. They're making up shit on the fly, and they sound like buffoons. And but this is a hustle. And there's a muscle in the hustle, and
people do not believe me when they ask me where do I get my sources from for all of my in-depth history, and they accuse me of making stuff up or whatever. And I'm like, no, I swear it's Google. I just use Google, but you got to go past the first page. You got to go on 2, 3, 4. You got to do more advanced searches in just one word. You got to do like a whole sentence with a question mark. But yes, if you fully use Google to its full potential, you can get the same information that I got from my review. It's out there waiting for you to discover it, but you don't have to take, I'll be like LeVar Burton. Don't have to take my word for it. Take a look. It's in a book, okay?
Do you remember that? And then it would go, and then the rainbow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, same thing here. And a lot of people don't realize that you can put your search in quotation marks, and it will help you to cache the search so you can refine it even more. There's all these things that are at your disposal on the internet, and people are still bullshitting. They're still bullshitting, and it's like, it's just mind-boggling, and people are making so much content over bullshitting, making video after video on. And it's like, no, that's not correct. Let me correct. And that some people have the egos, and if you do correct them, they will see to it that you are humiliated and made to feel embarrassed, and maybe even excommunicated from that community, the little sub-community that they create. And it sucks, and it's so petty, and it's like, we're all here to learn from each other. Do you know how many times people have had to correct me? It's humbling, but it's good. And the people who are correcting me, because I've actually put a little bit of work into it, I'm able to talk to people who are perfumers and have studied in grass and have studied at you name the school. I'm corrected by people who write for Name magazine and people who have been doing fragrance journalism for much longer than I have. And they correct me, and they tell me, that wasn't correct, so you want to edit that. And I'm like, okay, you know what? This means a lot to me because I need to learn and I need to grow. And I go in and I do a little footnote. I originally said this, but actually I stand corrected. It's this. And a little bit of humbling goes a long way, because people will really relate to you if you're willing to admit a mistake, So that's my spiel on it. But yeah, Derek, you and I both, it's about like internet research, like I'm not hanging out in a library for hours. I don't have that kind of time. It's at my fingertips, like it is for all of us. And I think that people over time can catch on to that, and they can realize that, like, is this person really a reliable source? Because like they're contradicting themselves from like one video to another. And, it's House of Xiii, Duncan says, is not the worst. So maybe I'm a little harsh to this brand that is best known for its Minnie Mouse fragrance. Maybe I'm wrong. So Duncan, let us know, what are some of the fragrances that are worth looking into from House of Xiii? Hi, Capo. Oh, go ahead, Rachel. I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to add in, they're also very well known for their House of Hufflepuff. That one was like a big one with the influencers. They do
really?
Disney. They do obviously Harry Potter. They do a lot of
Batman.
Yeah, totally. And honestly, the fragrances aren't bad, but they're quite gourmand and very
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It just was such a canned response. Like, obviously, whoever this content manager or Instagram manager was hadn't noticed that I'm not really one to really write about too many gourmand fragrances. I can count on two hands all the fragrances that I have out of over 1,000 in my collection. I don't even know if I should even mention that at this point, but over in my entire collection that would actually qualify as gourmand. So it's not really in my wheelhouse. So, Sinfluencer, I'm a little behind here. Oris Eros, it's so lovely to have you joining us here. I worked for a boutique hipster hotel brand as a copywriter, and I lasted for 3 months. Couldn't hack it. Being professionally cool is just not for me. And it's quite relatable. Or anything by Christopher Sheldrake pre-2010 might be a pheromone. Fair enough. I can't argue with that. It's fresh. Wait, it's fresh. It's so fresh. Exciting.
Yeah, that song. It's fresh, exciting.
Oh, it smells so nice and boozy because of the bourbon. But it's not. No, it's not the bourbon. It is bourbon, an island off of Madagascar. Question for the panel, and I'm so sorry that it was actually 3 minutes ago, but I'm a little behind. Thanks, John, for the question. Tell me your favorite note or accord and an example of fragrance that uses it really well. We'll start off with you, Rachel.
Again, this is just the first thing to pop into my mind. So if you give me, I would give you a different answer every 5 minutes. But the first one that pops to my mind is Labdanum. And the Zoo, Everlasting is one that I love. The way that it's combined with the yellow florals, right? The Narcissus, Jean-Claude in that is breathtaking to me. That's one of my forever fragrances. Yeah, and another one just popped into my mind too. But
do it.
Okay, so another material that I really love is orange blossom, and for me the way that 24 Faubourg from Hermès, but the original formulation by Maurice Roussel is my that there's something about the sillage of that fragrance. This is something that we talked about, Joseph, on a show like a month ago, I think, with Sam. That is just, it leaves me breathless. There's something about that perfume and the way that floral accord. And I know floral accords are difficult, right? I mean, that's the way traditionally, or at least I've read in books that traditionally, back in the day, that a perfumer was really their merit, where they're really judged by their floral accords, and that one is just spellbinding to me. So there's
Wonderful. I'll just give a really quick answer to this one because, much like Rachel, I can't really narrow it down to one, but I can give an example of a favorite note or accord and a fragrance that uses it really well. And the one that came to mind to me actually is ambret seed. And the example of the ambret seed it used is in Musc Nomade from Annick Goutal, because it's one of the few fragrances where I feel like it really showcases ambret in a way that I had never really experienced in any other fragrance. And I am convinced that ambret seed oil or absolute is used in it, even if it's a small quantity. And it's just it's just magical. Because ambret seed is such a mercurial material from a plant that produces a musk compound, but it also has these facets that are sort of nutty and fruity and really round and creamy and very musky, but not necessarily dirty musky, just like this really globular kind of it's almost like the plant is able to produce something close to a laundry musk in nature, but then it's just much more than that. I feel like it's in sort of like a similar category to ambergris, where it is just so multifaceted and so kaleidoscopic that it's really hard to kind of pare it down descriptive wise. But I think that Musc Nomade, Yeah, and their usage of an ambret accord. So that will be my answer. Derek, on to you. I know that you're furiously typing and interacting with our lovely audience here, but can you give us an answer here for your favorite note or accord and an example of a fragrance that uses it really well?
Sure. Yeah, I was typing about leather being one of my favorite genres, but that information's already there, so I'll pick something else for this.
Okay. Hey, fair enough.
So, honestly, for one fragrance, I love rose. And one of the things I always tell people is if you really do want a rose that smells like an actual rose bush, it's ridiculous, but it's that cheap $15, $20 Perfumer's Workshop Tea Rose. I mean, that fragrance smells as much like a rose as being outside with a bunch of roses is going to smell, yet it's cheaper than a meal at like Applebee's. And I'm just still stunned how they're able, whether there's real rose oil in that or not, I'm just amazed at how much like a rose, like a whole rose, the stem, the dirt, the everything, tip to tail, how much that bottle, as cheap as it is, smells like a rose. It's so well done for that price point. I can't believe it. So it's just, if you want to smell like a rose and nothing but a rose, that's it, man. Why spend more?
Good choice. I'm with you there. You know, and you know I champion the cheap but cheerful and the affordable fragrances. One could be mistaken that the fragrance would have a much higher price point. And I think that is an example for sure. Ambergris. Yeah, you know, this is the reason why. I will show you the reason why I don't pronounce it the French way, because I'm pronouncing it. I could pronounce it the French way, like croissant.
Ambergris or whatever. Ambergris.
The reason why I say ambergris is because when you visit New Zealand and when you visit many different places where ambergris is you can't really harvest it, but where it is collected. This is the book, Floating Gold, from Christopher Kent. It was determined that was the most appropriate pronunciation based on those who deal with the material globally, ambergris. But it doesn't mean that there's one way of pronouncing it. So you could pronounce it ambergris, ambergris. That's why I do it, because I read the book.
I'm just picking on you. You know that, right?
No. I didn't think that you were picking on me. It's just I wanted to kind of explain it. It's a greasy amber from the backside.
Yeah, it's like Vitalis. It's like the Vitalis of ambers.
Yeah. John Peeble says Labdanum is glorious, and he'll need to smell that particular zoo perfume. 24 Faubourg is indeed beautiful, and I haven't thought about it in a long while. I haven't done a review of the 24 Faubourg. I have the original version. Here we go, nerding out. I got the best version, the original.
Hey guys, I have the original version of 24 Faubourg from Hermes. Come on, guys.
That's the only one that counts. It's the only one that counts.
It's the only one that matters.
The only one that matters. Yeah, that's right.
Let me take my retainer out real quick.
It's just that Jean-Claude Ellena reformulated it, which is he did his Jean-Claude Ellena thing. He lightened it, simplified it, he clarified it, which is great. But Roussel had this he's got this big bold base that was just luxurious and thick and you know what I mean. And it's a different feel, right?
Well, reason why I prefer his version of Bellamy. I feel like he streamlined Bellamy in a way that I prefer. And that's considered blasphemy to some people who prefer the shaker version.
Right.
Well, you know what's funny about Roussel, now that you guys mention it? A lot of Roussel's perfumes are so big and loud and bold and musky because the man's a chain smoker.
Yes.
He smokes 2 packs of cigarettes a day and he can barely smell anything.
Yeah.
He's like Gene Carls, who was completely anosmic by the end of his career. The dude can't smell what he's doing. So, of course, all of his fragrances are going to have these massive musk accords and these big, bold fruit accords. That's the only way he knows what he's working on. His fragrances are literally like that because he's just, all his interviews, he's just puffing away, lighting up one after another, man. I swear, he's like the Marlboro Man, but the perfumer version of the Marlboro Man.
Didn't Germaine Xiii smoke as well? And that's kind of why her fragrances are big bad bitches as well. John, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And also, Cellier was also in functional fragrance for a while too, and so I think that's another influence on her. She liked to really overdose, right?
Yeah, because she made soaps and such and
Yeah.
cleaners and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. But John, will you answer your own question in the comments? What's a note or an accord that you love in a fragrance?
I would
if you
love
don't
to
mind?
hear an answer from John. John, if you could do that, we'd love to hear an answer from you. And just a reminder, folks, I don't know if we've reached 40. If anybody can confirm if we've reached 40 likes, we can try to reach 45, 33 people tuned in. If we can get 45 likes by the time we sign off, that would be just fantastic, because that would bring us to a pretty good amount of likes, if I may say so myself, before we even archive it. Very nice, very nice. Does anybody else in the chat have any other questions, comments? Do you want us to talk about anything else? We're going to stand for about, since we're on a roll here, we're going to stand about 15 more minutes, and then the three of us are going to take it backstage, and we're all going to talk shit about all of you and everyone else in the fragrance community and how awful all of you really are. Just kidding. We're just going to be having, some private time. John just answered with labdanum. And an étal d'oranges attaquer le soleil. Yeah. And I love what, now, if I'm not mistaken, this is Quentin Biche who did Attaquer le Soleil. And he uses a decolorized labdanum. So there is real labdanum. It's decolorized. And there is a decolorization process. It's fascinating stuff that you can decolorize resins so that you result in a fragrance that is nearly transparent. And Duncan says Eider Antler still reminds me of succulents, John. That's a good description. Yeah, like juicy succulents. Yeah. John Bieber. Catch my whiff. Do any of you have a preferred brand of decant travel sprayer? I don't, but you know what, Rachel, you've used these great decant sprayers.
Yeah.
Can you inform? I actually, for my reference too, where can we get those? They're
Amazon.
Multicolored. Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon. They're not expensive at all. They're on Amazon. Yeah, they're great. I think I don't remember who recommended. I think it was either Rich Mitch or Ramsey, or I don't know, someone in the online community recommended it to me, and they're great because they keep so there's like a normal kind of plastic, or maybe it's glass, I don't know, but there's like a normal atomizer inside that can be 3 milliliter, 2 milliliter, 5 milliliter, 10 milliliter, whichever you want. But on the outside is, I think are they metal or plastic? I don't know, but on the outside is like a cover, like it's encased so that the temperature and the sun or the light won't really bother the fragrance, which is my favorite part. Yeah. And they won't leak. They don't leak at all. And so if you just look up travel sprayers or decants on Amazon, you'll see they kind of look like lipstick tubes.
Yeah.
Right? But they're not expensive.
And what's great about them too is that, often when you get atomizers, you have to put this like plumbing tape because they'll leak easily, and those seem very secure. Yeah. And they're attractive too. And we have Derek bashing Quentin Biche in the chat, being a rascal. Quentin just phoned it in. Biche, we got hot takes. We've got hot takes. Too many.
I aim to misbehave.
Too many of his recent releases are just bubblegum shower gel bashed together crap. Now, are these any releases that were that are from État Libre d'Orange, Eldo, or what releases are you referring to? I honestly am ignorant to this. I don't.
Like half of the new designer men's releases I've seen all have Quentin Biche either signed or co-signed, and they all smell like the same Invictus smash together stuff. Like the newest Burberry fragrance and the newest Valentino Born in Aroma Green Extravaganza. That one was okay. I gave that one a thumbs up. But the vast majority of them, and they're all like from the usual suspects, making another elixir this, parfum that. And they all just have the same super sweet, like fruity, junipery, bay leaf thing floating up top, and then the same like, heavy tonka / ambroxan crap. And they just smell like, he's just literally... he's got like a dartboard and he's just throwing darts and hitting materials. Okay, it's going to be this one this time,
What I'm going to do is I'm going to play devil's advocate here. What if Quentin is being given certain specific briefs, and as much as he wants to deviate from them and do something more interesting, they really want him to do this bullshit because they know he's technically proficient and he wants to pay the bills, he wants to bring in the money, so he just he just makes this tripe, because it's a job. You know how like a lot of artists, they end up having to do stuff that they don't really have their heart in because they actually want to make money. Maybe it has something to do with that.
So he's become a fry cook at Waffle House. Got it.
Yeah. Well, and that makes for a good metaphor. It could very well be that. But what he could do, what a lot of these perfumers do is they do what they really want to do. Their true vision they do with a house that gives them more creative liberty, and they're not restricted to a brief, and they can make what they're really passionate about, which is probably why maybe his contributions to État Libre d'Orange, Eldo, are more interesting and enjoyable to somebody who really is passionate about perfume, and he just makes the garbage to sell to the masses. Garbage, quote unquote.
But yeah, there's like 3 perfumers that seem to be doing this a lot, like him and Sonia Constant and Veronique Nyberg and one other, another guy who's Antoine Weizendu. All 4 of those seem to be making the merry-go-round on the designers. And every other fragrance I see from this L'Oreal profile or that whatever, it's one of those 4 people attached to it, usually in pairs. So it'll be like Veronique and Quentin on one, or Antoine and Sonia on the other, or mix and match or whatever. And I'm just like, ugh, just gets so tiring. It's all the same stuff over and over and over again.
Quentin Bish is a sellout. He's a sellout. He's a poser. He's no longer punk rock. Now, I just really think that for some of these perfumers, they want to make a really good living, and they're just like, okay, you want me to make this bullshit? I'll whip it together. Here you go, done and done. Bada bing, bada boom. And then they leave room to do the fun, cool stuff with the smaller brands that give them, more creative liberty. Great to have you tuned in, Professor Value. Have a wonderful evening. Sleep well. Quentin is in his Akigala Wood era. For those who are not aware, Akigala Wood. Yeah, I was wondering where Rachel went. Did you notice that Rachel had disappeared? She's coming back. Hey, you're back. We were wondering where you went. Quentin's in his Akigala Wood era.
My phone just...
I know. Oh, and she just left again. Oh, man. I hope that she's able to return. Akigala wood, for those who aren't aware, is a type of fractional distillation of patchouli, which brings out some very specific woody aspects, woody facets to it, which has become very popular in modern perfumery. It is actually a natural or a composite. So, yeah, I think we're kind of winding down here. I think I want to try to at least have Rachel come in so she can join us backstage, and then we'll wrap things up here. What is Victoria's secret? This sounds like that horrible music phase of mixing different songs. Mashups, yes. That was like popular maybe 12, 13, 14 years ago in the clubs. They would do like sort of a mashup between 2 different tracks, the vocals overlaid over the track of a different song. I wasn't too thrilled about it. Yeah, exactly. I don't want to buy it either. It's not meant for me anyhow. It's not meant for my taste. So they're just doing something to make make money, pay the bills. All the power to them. But I don't think that honestly, like a lot of these perfumers who are doing it, it's really like representative of their more artistic vision.
Their boss is telling them what to do. I mean, I get it. I'm not trying to be like it's his choice to do these. Why is it always got to be him on all these?
He's a little greedy. He wants to get all the briefs. He wants to get all the, he's making the rounds, and yeah. I mean, that's probably what's going on. That's why. For
a while it was Alberto Morillas. For a while, like in the 2000s, 2010s, Alberto Morillas was getting all the trash briefs. But I guess he's getting a little older now, so they're letting him do a little more stuff that he wants to do, and they're giving the trash briefs to somebody else. So he's already done his hours in the coal mine. He gets to retire now. But there was a time when all the trash was coming from him too, but not anymore. So.
Yeah. I think they go through stages where they're really at the top of their game. They become in demand, and then it's like you see that with musicians, and you see that with actors, and you see that with other people who are in the creative realm or the craft realm or whatever you want to call it. They reach like a certain point where they want to really capitalize on it, and that's probably what some of these perfumers do. I mean, Jean-Claude Ellena didn't not everything that he created was like a masterpiece in my mind. And none of
no.
Like my favorite perfumers, some of them did some stuff where I'm like, well, that's underwhelming, but you know, it's the truth. Like I'm not that type of person who's going to worship, you know, every single release that a perfumer does, because obviously, you know, as a profession, he needs to appeal to different demographics, and he's faced with, you know, different concepts and different expectations as an artist and as somebody working in the field. So there's going to be things where it's like, I don't, you know, I'm not going to like it. You know, there's some people who are like, I think that, you know, the Polish family could do no wrong. Maybe the Polish had some stinkers too. They did. They still do. I think that beige is glorified honey scented shampoo. I really don't think it's amazing. I really think it's overrated. The not everything in Les Exclusifs is exquisite to me. Some of it's brilliant. Some of it's like, oh, that's underwhelming. No.
I mean, Olivier Polge did compose Bora Bora for Liz Claiborne, and he also composed Ferragamo F. He did that too, and neither of those were all that great. So.
No, Rachel, that you have to charge your phone because you're not going to be able to be backstage if we leave. So let us know if you're going to be charged enough to get back on here, and then we can sign off and we can have a backstage discussion. We're running about 16 minutes after the hour here. We have 35 people tuned in. We'll stay on for a little bit longer to see if Rachel can get back on. Does anybody else have any other questions, comments for me? And for Derek here, we can answer your questions. Fingers crossed. We'll be crossing our fingers. I have a tough time in my old age crossing fingers. We'll cross our fingers for you. Just like, yep, that's one way of doing it too. Do you have a hitchhiker's thumb? That's not possible for me. I just have like a good hitchhiker's thumb, that's all. Famous YouTuber, mathematically, Dominique Ropion has to be my favorite perfumer, but I don't really look too much into it. Yeah, truthfully, it's like I have a spreadsheet for my collection of fragrances, and I noticed like how many bottles of fragrance I have from each perfumer, and it was an interesting insight. But it was also interesting to note that a lot of my favorite perfumers were not highly ranked, because some of my favorite perfumers did not have such prolific output because they were active at a time where they weren't expected to have a prolific output like the perfumers in the 21st century. So that was kind of interesting. Catch My Whiff asks, do either of you notice more people at work wearing the smelly stuff? I work from home, so I can't really answer that question. And
I work alone.
In my sleepy bedroom town, I very seldom smell fragrance. It's a suburb. Some people are wearing something or other. Occasionally, a nice, sophisticated older woman will be smelling a classic perfume, and I'll nod in agreement, and I'll be like, "Oh, you smell very nice. Is that Aromatics Elixir? Oh, it's Van Cleef & Arpels First. Oh, very nice." That's the only excitement I get in this town, really. Honestly, everything else is just like knockoffs of Baccarat Rouge, knockoffs of Viventus, a lot of Sauvage. That's really all I'm smelling.
I did want to say something about Creed real quick. When we were talking about expensive packaging, I never got to mention. It's funny that all the luxury brands now try to give you the heaviest possible packaging, but back when Creed was kind of the number one luxury brand, they were like doing the exact opposite. They were giving you bottles with leaky sprayers and plastic caps that fall off, and labels that have bubbles in them, and people were like, "Yeah, it's handmade," because of all the imperfections. And I'm like, "No, that's just poor quality control. That's not handmade anything."
No, handmade my ass. You can totally tell that shit's not handmade. A handmade cap, they're like molded in a factory. People are.
And when you were also mentioning about material quality, not necessarily making parity with price point, I wanted to qualify your statement by further saying that people pay $200 for molecule 0 whatever. And if it's molecule 01 or 03, and you're getting like a 5% or 10% dilution suspension of Ambroxan or ISO-E Super, and you're paying $200 for that because it comes in a fancy bottle with a number on the back of it, that's not even a perfume anymore. You could go to Perfume's Apprentice and just buy that stuff in a vial.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate again. We got a few of them this evening or morning, wherever you are, folks who are tuned in. So one could argue, I'm playing devil's advocate, so it's not entirely my own belief. One could argue that the artist and their approach to that, the approach being that of minimalism, which I'm a big fan of minimalism. One of my favorite painters is Ellsworth Kelly. He's exactly one of those painters when somebody looks in a museum, they're like, I could do that. That's only 2 colors. But, the concept of form, color, design, space, it's kind of like a level of art that, it's the artist's art. They're not the art lovers kind of art, not the average, like suburban family goes in, they scratch their heads. And I think that's the same idea for these perfumes. Now, isn't this also Quentin Bish that we're talking about, who does the essential molecules, or is it?
No, it's
the other one. Is it Gesashun?
Gesashun, yeah.
Gesashun.
Gesundheit, by the way.
Yeah,
you need tissue?
Thank you. It's the allergies. The springtime. I'm starting to get some issues with the allergies. Thank you. Gesashun. I think that the concepts are really. I think that they're quite interesting. They're not really my style. I think that the one would argue that barring the pricing, barring the cost rather of the materials, be that 2 or 3 different materials in the composition or the formula rather, we don't know the exact percentage. So we know that they exist, but what did he do with them that's proprietary? That's just playing devil's advocate. That being said, I get your point that the materials themselves are not very expensive, but there is this argument that the end product being a piece of art is really, how do you put a price on that? Devil's advocate, totally. And I'll tell you, recently, there was somebody who left a comment on one of my videos about how Christophe Laudamiel created a perfume using only 3 different materials. And they said that that's not creative. And I take umbrage with that, because creativity cannot be, you cannot quantify creativity based on the number of materials. It is how the materials are used. So I think that one can very well create a perfume that is creative using 3 materials, because we don't know exactly, unless we have all the proprietary information, in what percentage each of the 3 materials were made, the origin of the materials, the producer of the materials, and there are some other variables in it as well. So I am of the belief that you can't really determine creativity just based on the number of materials. And this person argued, Institute of Art and Olfaction, they should only allow submissions that have 5 or more materials in the perfume. And I don't agree with that. I think that it shouldn't be based on the amount of materials used. It should be based on how they're used, the final artistic the artistic product. So that's just but I get, I don't totally disagree with you, Derek.
One material suspended in alcohol, though, is that really a perfume?
Do we know, is there really one that actually is just one material? And that's been
all of those molecule ones. I'm not talking the eccentric molecules, just the straight molecule 01, 02, 03. They are single material suspensions. They are not full perfumes. It's just like the Not a Perfume from Juliet Has a Gun, where it's just Cetilox and that's all it is.
Yeah. Well,
that's what they are.
This is the thing. This is me coming from my art background, so I'm going to be... I personally wouldn't spend my money on it because I know too much about what.
Me too. I know too much about that. So,
but the thing is that there could be the reliance on somebody who doesn't, or they might not realize they can do it themselves, or maybe they don't want to do it themselves. Maybe they don't want to get some, Cetilox and dilute it in alcohol, even though technically they could.
Cheaper.
They could do it a lot more cheaply. But maybe it's, the quality of the alcohol isn't as good, or the quality of the Cetilox isn't as good. So I know I sound like I'm defending something that's indefensible, but honestly, I think that the concepts are good. It is an example of creativity. However, the price point should have been a lot less than they were. You know what I mean? How much were they selling? They were selling for a couple $100, right? Or $150 or
something like that.
So they probably should have just sold them like they would sell Demeter fragrances, sell them for $30, $40. And then,
that would be more fair to me. Because at that point, you're just building a reference library. You're not building something that's meant to be like, you know. But I mean, also on the other hand, like you said, maybe someone has enough money that they don't want to make their own ham sandwich. They want to pay someone else $200 to make them a ham sandwich. That's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Fine.
But I do think that Gezashin has made some brilliant things, like Boudica Woad. So, and I don't know how many materials is in that.
Oh, yeah, he has some really good proper perfumes. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the man's terrible or nothing. Don't get that twisted. I'm not saying anything about the man. I'm just saying that particular line of fragrances just kind of rubs me a little bit.
Yeah. No, I totally, I don't disagree with you in that respect. I think that the price point is a bit cynical to charge $120, $130 for something that comprises of just one material that isn't a particularly expensive material. So I'm with you there. I think that it could be priced, no more than $50 maybe for a large bottle. Catch My Whiff says, I definitely have noticed more people wearing perfume and I love it, which is good. Are you living in a city? Because I think that if you're in a city, not Boston's not a big perfume city, but like New York, LA, Austin even, I don't know. What is Victoria's Secret? Do you three often wear the same few fragrances, like a top 5, pretty consistently versus what I assume is having a ton of perfume, kind of like having a music library, but listening to favorites? I don't even know how to explain the way that I use fragrance because I wear like multiple fragrances in a single day. And then I take a whole weekend off of fragrances altogether to reset my nose. I don't really have a rotation at this point. I wish I had more lifetime to have a rotation, but such is, the hobby. I don't know. What about you, Derek?
I've got a glass cabinet that has the bulk of my collection, aside from my separate Avon collection. And then I have a shelf of what I call dumb reaches, which really aren't dumb reaches. They're just fragrances that are either more than half empty or fragrances I know I'm going to use up. So it's my greatest hits. So I don't have to look in the cabinet for them, right? So that single shelf that has all those things that I've tracked my wares on and know I reach for a lot, I will go towards that shelf more than I will open the glass and go inside for one of the other things. But even then, there's more than 10 fragrances on that shelf. So there really isn't a top 10 for me other than what my top 10 most worn are. But there isn't like I rotate between a small number. I just have the cabinet, which is everything, and then the stuff I've worn the most, which is on a single shelf outside of that. And then I've got my aftershaves below when I shave, and then my Avons above for when I want an Avon or whatever. That's really the only rhyme or reason I have. So.
And then next, High Cap 06, no perfumer hits a home run with every release. It gets annoying when people gush over a creation because it's made by a specific name or house for that matter. Not mentioning any names, but it gets, I don't know, a little suspicious when people are just a little too obsessed with a single house and a single perfumer. It's like, you really have to have like some more discerning taste, my friend, or else you just seem like you're full of shit. Honestly, I know that that's pretty harsh, but that's just my view on that. What is your favorite Frederic Malle? Are they overrated? I know Derek thinks they're overrated. I don't think that they're overrated, so maybe I can answer that. My favorite Frederic Malle is Une Fleur de Cassis. That's my favorite because I think that it's just absolutely.
I don't own a single one. I would like to, but they're too expensive. But if I was going to own one, it would probably be Portrait of a Lady. But, I like my kidneys where they are, so I'm not going to have that fragrance anytime soon.
Ormond Jane. Yeah, Gezashin has made some great contributions to Ormond Jane. Ormond Jane as a whole, the only one that it really resonates with me and I have in my collection is Tolu from Ormond Jane. Is perfume without an intention? Well, I think that an intention has to be a precedent, even if that intention is choosing to do something minimalist. So I just think that the price point for the commercial product is up for debate when you do something like that. However, when it becomes more than one material and it's 2, then you start to have a variable. And then you kind of like, maybe somebody might use ISO-E Super 90% or 98% and maybe use 2% of a rare Blue Lotus Absolute. So then we start to, take other things into consideration. Oh, whether it's perfume. Yeah, wait a minute. I guess I'm not asking the question if a perfume is perfume art, or is it just fragrance? Yeah, this is another debate as well, because many of us can consider it to be more of a craft rather than an art. So we can get into the discussion of the difference between craft and art, but maybe that's another discussion for another time. Then we have famous YouTuber Gautier 2, Gautier 2, if you want to say that. It's said to have just patchouli, musk, and amber. I think it's a precursor to MFK Pour le Soir. I think any combination of patchouli, musk, and amber can constitute a perfume because, like I said earlier, percentages, types of patchouli, types of musk, types of amber accord, because an amber accord can be all different.
Isn't Caron Pour on Homme just lavender or lavandin at 40%, and there's tonka, some kind of musk. It used to be civet, now it's probably something else, and then that's it. Vanilla, the lavandin, the vanilla, the tonka, the musk. Yeah. Everything else is, if there is other materials, they're very tiny in that formula.
Lavender, vanilla, coumarin, some natural tonka, and there was a point where there was genuine civet, and then civetone and some other musks, but that's pretty much it. You can't really determine if it's a proper perfume by the amount of materials. That's like that. No. I'm sticking to it. Even that single one is still a perfume, but I still think so because that's just, the artist in me. It depends on how it is presented as a product. But I will agree that it is a little bit outrageous to sell it for like a premium when it is just a material that one can reproduce in alcohol dilution, But Isfahan, Ormond Jane is good too. And Catch My Whiff. You do work in Boston. I think this is coming back to me now. I apologize. And we're not a big perfume city at all. You're not very far from me, 15 miles. I'm out here in Natick, Massachusetts. Shock and pleasure. Wow, that's really great that people are starting to actually wear perfume in Boston. Of course, Kate. It's no sweat. What are you saying here? Discontinuified Discontinuified. Okay.
That's what happened to the Pour le Soir. It got discontinuified.
Thoughts on Goutal fragrances? I had mentioned a Goutal earlier, Musc Nomade. I do really love the work that Goutal did with Isabelle Doyen, and I have 10 in my collection. I also love Isabelle Doyen's creation for Naomi Goodsir, Nuit de Bacali. And I love a few of them. I love the Ample Fetiche and Encens Flamboyant and Ninfeomeo and Mandragora Pourpre. Mind if I go poop? That's what it sounded like I just said. There's a few of them. Yeah, lovely stuff. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the newer formulations. I've heard that some of them have been really watered down, so on and so forth. I don't have an opinion on that because I'm not familiar with them. The only ones that I have are the versions that I have. So, and Rachel unfortunately cannot join us. We're going to be signing off in just a moment. I'm going to go backstage, but yeah, we'll start to close things out with our theme music here. And in we have perfumer Nick Gilbert. He and Pia Long collaborate together for the new line Bougie Bougies. He's going to be joining Rachel and I for a wonderful discussion. Another great perfumer will be returning to Effluvium, so let's look forward to that. And then we also are going to have Stephen Matthews. He is a perfume writer. He's going to be talking about the influencer world and some of the problematic aspects. We did touch upon that a little bit on this stream, but we're going to get into more comprehensive discussion on that. So he'll be joining in 2 weeks following that. And then towards the end of April / early May, we're going to have this gentleman here, and I will show the book as I do each time I mention him, because this is a wonderful resource. Perfume in Search of Your Favorite Scent. Neil Chapman will be our special guest. I'll be coming up in a few weeks. So that's our lineup coming up, and we'll be announcing other guests until the end of the season, which will be around the end of May. So yeah, I think that's going to be it, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us in this discussion. And Derek, we'll be chatting more backstage. Thank you for coming back. All right, Derek, we're signing off now. Say
Okay.
bye-bye. Say bye-bye to the
Bye-bye.
camera. All right. Bye-bye.